Right, I'm gonna
Oh.
hit live.
I'm going to send out the tweets.
Yep. God,
What's your
I really
spelling?
should have done something with my hair. I look like a crazy person. Hello, everyone. We should be live, in
All
theory.
right, the tweets out.
Hopefully, you can hear
I
us
love. I've lost about 200 followers.
because you haven't tweeted.
Yeah.
Wow. Should ping them again. Hey, what's the update?
Yeah. Nothing. Zero.
Well, I mean, they made you unfollow everyone. That's something.
I gotta center myself. Am I centered now?
So I really need to just tell myself not to look at the screen because I look so stupid looking down like this.
Looks fine. Oh, this delay is killing me. Like, I want to center myself, but
I can center you if you just stand where you want to stand. I can do it on my
all
end.
right, I'm standing here.
Okay, give me a sec. There you go. Now you're centered. Don't move. No joking.
Seriously.
Oh, I should open the voice recorder and make sure that's all working. Oops. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. You've gone really blue.
I know. Oh, I've gone really blue.
Testing
Okay.
1, 2, 3. There you
I
go.
messed with the auto.
That's normal.
Yeah.
I am ready to go. I closed the bloody voice recorder like an idiot. There we go.
Oh, that really did go blue. I just saw it. It just came up. Looks
Yeah,
kind of
a
cool.
Smurf.
It looks artsy. Should make you red.
Do the host show like an album cover.
Yes.
All right, I'm ready to
Put
go when
3D
you are.
glasses on. Okay. Let me breaking news. Yeah. Blah blah blah. Blah 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 COVID.
Yeah, it's over now. We got a vaccine.
Right, exactly. Let's see. Bringing up the list. RTX. All right, I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central podcast, episode 208 for December 11th, 2020. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central podcast. As we're rounding out 2020, the year is finally going to end. I know there's a hope that 2021 is going to be like instantly better, but I have a feeling it won't be, but that's okay. We got a huge podcast this week. We'll still try to keep it to 90 minutes, but depends how ranty I guess. Plus we missed last week. Not that a lot happened last week, but still, let's go through the notes. We're going to be doing x64 for Windows 10 on ARM is finally here, kind of. It's in early beta testing. You have to be on the Windows Insider program for it, but we'll go through that. We've only had a few hours with it, so we don't have a lot to report on in terms of performance, but we do have a few little bits of feedback on that. So we'll talk about that. Windows 10 and 10X in 2021. Zach, of course, did a big article this week talking about what to expect in 2021. And this isn't some like hopes and expectations, but actual insight into what is going to happen, much to probably the unhappiness of Microsoft themselves, who probably don't want Zach to tell us these things. We'll also go into new Surface hardware in 2021. Of course, as expected, there's probably going to be some kind of spring thing and an October thing, but that actually may change a bit as we get a few straggling devices coming in early next year. So we'll go through that and what you should expect and how to plan your budget accordingly. Surface Duo 3 months later. We talk a lot about the Duo here because it's actually the most interesting thing of 2020, in my opinion, at least as far as technology goes. Followed by the X1 Fold, which, yes, I still got to review. I got a lot of stuff to review. That's coming up shortly. But the Duo, 3 months later, we'll go through what's good, what's bad, what still needs improving, and, of course, what the ugly is. So I've spent a lot of put a lot of detail into that, which I thought was good because unlike other reviewers, we still use the Duo and can talk about it as if we actually use it. But we'll go through that. It should be fun. We'll talk briefly about HP Reverb G2. We don't do a lot here on, virtual reality and Windows mixed reality. It doesn't get a lot of attention anymore. But HP has their new headset, which is about to come out. And I was supposed to review this, but I gave it to Cale Hunt to review because one, I don't have time to review it. And two, Cale just does an outstanding job, and he actually uses VR. That's the difference. I dabble, but he actually is into it and has all the different headsets. So he was way more qualified to review this than I was, and he really did a knockout job for that review. So we talk about his stuff. Cyberpunk 2077, the news of the week, I should say. That in terms of news on Windows Central, this one has really dominated. I haven't bought the game. I don't really have that much interest in the game. I mean, I do, but at the same time, I just been so busy with things. I just haven't really been paying attention to it. But we, of course, have the major review from Jez Corden, who, basically called it one of the best games ever. And then we had a couple of follow-up articles on it talking about the performance issues, basically, if you're on an Xbox One, and how that should affect Halo and decisions there. So we'll kind of go through that a little bit. Also want to talk briefly, we didn't get this article up on Windows Central because I kind of forgot about it, but Microsoft Authenticator. If you don't use this app, it's on iOS and Android. It's for two-factor authentication, which of course you should be using. And you should be using this as a code generator over SMS because SMS itself is flawed. If someone hacked your SIM, you goodbye to all your accounts, basically, whereas the code generators are a little bit more secure. And it's a really great app, and they've been really building out. And there's a new feature that's in the beta on iOS, which I find fascinating because it's going to give you a little bit more insight to some things that's happening with Edge and how they're kind of what they're planning to do. So we'll talk about that and how I assume it's coming to Android. And then finally, we'll do our thing of the week. I actually do have a thing of the week this week. Hopefully Zach has one as well. Woo. I like we just spent 5 minutes talking about what we're going to talk about on this podcast. So, Zach, how are you doing on this fine December?
I'm not too bad. I'm currently. So this show is being recorded on a different device than usual. I usually do it on a Surface Studio, but I'm kind of looking at getting rid of the Studio and just using the Surface Book 3 as my only device, which means getting a dock too and a 4K monitor and just sort of using the single device as a tablet, laptop, and desktop. But that means I need the Surface Book 3 to be able to do everything the Studio can do, including this podcast every Friday. It's not a crazy setup, it's XSplit, Edge browser, Skype to do, and the voice recorder really, and that's basically all it needs to run. But my Surface Book 3 is really struggling to do this. This is the top end model as well. It's 32 gigs of RAM, 15-inch, 1660 Ti, which I thought was more powerful than the Studio One. It is on paper, but the Studio One seems to be able to handle this setup way more. I don't know. I'm not too keen on this. I don't know why my book is struggling so much.
Well, the processor on that one is going to be maybe the factor. So
yeah,
it's been so long since I covered Studio. I believe Studio uses a 45 watts processor, whereas Book is around 25 watt. I think can peak a little bit higher than that. So that may be part of the bottleneck. Yeah, it's a shame that with some of the Surface stuff, it doesn't always get the latest hardware refreshed.
Yeah.
Because if you heard this podcast for the last few weeks, I've been kind of gushing about the 11th gen Intel stuff. I know everybody's excited about AMD, and that's fair, but I see in my reviews, I get Intel 11th gen more than I do AMD. That's going to change a little bit in 2021, but I'm just more exposed to it. And it really makes a huge difference. And so I'm excited to see refreshed Surface products with 11th gen. And I'll talk a little bit about that in my thing of the week too, because there's spoiler. It's a laptop that with a review that's coming out early next week. That you listen to the end of the podcast because it's going to be a spoiler on that review. But I'm going to make a big confession about it. So Well, good luck with your setup. But yeah, you should ultimately get what I have here, the HP Omen Obelisk, which I have to review. There's a new tower out, and I have to get that review out in the next 2 weeks too. Um, it's a shame they want me to send it back because
Uh,
it's kind of like the one I have now, but better, right? It's got like it has I believe a 3080 in there or 3070 maybe.
nice. Yeah.
And of course, it's all, but you really kind of need that, I believe, for podcasting. You're going to need that a serious processor, like a Core i9 maybe, and jump in on that RTX bandwagon. Because with the RTX, you get to get the stuff I'm doing, which is the RTX voice. So it filters out if my
Yeah.
senior
That's
kitty cat
true.
runs there. So
I just, I don't.
yeah,
I'm not
Microsoft doesn't have anything. I know you're a Surface guy, so
Yeah.
but there's nothing there,
I
right?
know, I
You're
know, but I'm also I'm
maxed
just not a
out.
huge fan of like tower PCs. Not anymore. I used to love building PCs, but I just don't like. I can't get a
Here's the
tower
thing.
PC that looks like minimalist enough for me.
There's plenty of options out there. Why not the new Razer Tomahawk?
I haven't even seen it.
Oh, so the Razer Tomahawk actually it's good just brought that up because it came out this week. It was announced at CES. If you don't know, the Tomahawk is part of Intel did these things years ago called nukes, NUCs. I forgot what they stand for. They're basically mini computers. They're just little shells of a computer. Some of them were
Oh yeah.
pre-built with like an open, they had no CPU, no RAM, no storage, and you could just basically build it yourself and add what you wanted. Some others came kind of pre-built and pre-configured. The problem with them, they were always basically laptops performance. In other words, they didn't have GPUs in them, just discrete graphics. Intel now has a new generation of these that actually support via slots, like full-on GPUs. Razer created basically a small case for this, and it supports like up to the RTX, 3080, I imagine, and a 700 watt, I think, power supply, and like, actually, I forgot the power supply stats, but we have the article up on the site with all the specs. But if you really want a teeny PC, but that's a powerful PC with a real graphics card, this is what you want to get. The downside, of course, is as soon as you miniaturize everything and make it really hot and awesome looking, guess what goes up? That price, and it ain't cheap. I believe it
Yeah.
starts around $2,000.
Jeez.
It goes up to around 3,000. But for Zach, like seriously, Zach, like this is your kind of like device. It looks, I think it's even like see-through. I don't know. I forgot how they
Yeah.
changed it, but it looks really awesome. It's tiny. And the thing is, once you get that kind of setup and you tie into like a 2K monitor that does 144,
Yeah.
hertz or 160, and you start gaming like that, you get serious. Then you're just like you're in it. And you're like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't even game a lot, but when I do, I'm just like, hell yeah.
See,
Um,
what I really wanted to do in 2021, because I'm moving very soon, and I kind of wanted to use this as like an opportunity to just declutter and get rid of loads of stuff. And one of my goals was to sort of get rid of like a whole bunch of excess tech I have. Like I have a whole bunch of services I don't need. I just wanted to try and use one device for all of my PC needs and one device for my phone, the Book 3 and the Duo. But by the looks of things, I'm not going to be able to do that because the Book 3 is struggling. It really is.
Yep. Well, someday maybe Microsoft will come up with a desktop class. Yeah, someone's saying I love the 34-inch monitors, but Surface, they wish they Surface. Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, there are a lot of really good 34-inch displays out there, widescreens, curved. LG has one. I reviewed the LG 38-inch a couple of weeks ago. It's phenomenal. It's actually on the floor here because I'm reviewing another monitor. But yeah, so I'm sure a Surface one would be nice, but at the same time, that one wouldn't support inking, so I don't know why they would kind of do it. It would just be another display. In which case, don't forget, LG and Samsung make all the displays for everybody else. So I just say just go get it LG or Samsung direct because you're going to get their cream of the crop displays, whereas everybody else kind of gets whatever's left over. So anywho, that's enough preamble. Look at us. Jesus, we're going to be
It's going to be a long show. Strap in.
Let's jump into x64 support for Windows 10 on ARM. This was announced yesterday. It's a couple weeks late, but that's fine. Holidays and all that jazz. And plus, COVID is affecting how people work. So, I already heard, and I got a little snippy with people on our Windows Central Twitter account who are like, congratulations, Microsoft. All it took was Apple for you to do
Are
this.
you
And I'm like,
replying to people with the Windows Central account?
yes. Yes. And I'm like, slow your roll. Do you think that Microsoft whipped out x64 support
In like 3
emulation
weeks.
in a month because of the M1 chip? Like, if you think that, you need to stop talking about technology. You really have no clue. You have no rights. This has been in the work for a long time. All right, they had to at least start this probably a year ago, but maybe even 2 years ago. Even the x86 stuff was recycled from years ago and then brought up to speed and improved. This stuff isn't trivial. It's very hard. And I know everybody's like, oh, Apple does it so much better. But Windows is way more complicated than Apple's stuff because there's way more dev solutions and APIs and SDKs and everything that works on Windows than it does on Apple. And as we mentioned before, Apple is transitioning to ARM. So they're doing the whole thing and bringing everybody over with it, whereas Microsoft offers ARM as an option. And that's a big, big difference because Intel and AMD x86 support is still going strong. But so if you're on the Windows Insider program, and Zach, you can tell us in a second the actual dev build and all that stuff, you can now get initial x64 support. And we say initial because this is early beta testing, basically. We don't actually expect this to ship to at least early 2021, but probably not even to fall 2021, the way these things go.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a lot of polish on there. Zach, tell us about the news and, like if you got to try and stuff like that.
Yeah,
what we need to know.
So this showed up in the form of a new dev build, which was an interesting dev release because there's 2 builds that went out in the Insider ring. So if you're on an RPC, you want to get the right build. The build you want to download is build 21277, and this is from the usual rs_ pre-release branch, which is currently now on the Cobalt development semester, more or less. By default, you'll get 20277, which is an FE_release build, which has nothing in it, just fixes, minor fixes and stuff. You want to go to the Cobalt release, you want to go to the full 2021 updates that they're testing now, and that's build 21277, and it's an option in the Windows settings apps. If you go to check for updates, Windows will automatically try and download the boring build, but underneath that there's a little notify box that says download and install for the RS pre-release build. Make sure you do that, and then that will give you access to this 64-bit emulation stuff, because as Dan said, it's not coming till next year, and considering this is 21277, which is the Cobalt cycle, I'm not expecting this to show up or ship officially until the fall of 2021. So if you want to try this, you've got to get it in the Insider ring right now, otherwise you're going to be waiting for another 10 months or so. But yeah, I've downloaded it, tried it out briefly. I think Dan has as well. Impressions, the first impressions are mixed. This isn't game changing, I don't think. Maybe improvements will come in the form of driver updates and new builds and whatnot. But I've tried a few apps. I tried Slack 64, I tried Chrome 64, I tried there was another one I tried I've totally forgotten now. I tried 7-zip 64, and to varying levels of success. So Slack and Chrome, Slack just performed terribly, even worse than the x86 client, in my opinion. It just wasn't as good. Chrome 64 didn't even work. The window pops up, but the UI just doesn't show up. I'm assuming there's some sort of driver issue there. And 7-zip 64 worked great because it's a lightweight application. I think with these 64-bit apps, the lightweight ones are going to actually fly compared to the x86 ones. But when it gets to when it comes to this heavier stuff like Adobe Creative Cloud Suite or
and things with different libraries,
yeah.
They're just much more complicated apps. Yeah, I can see that being the case.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be as fast. I definitely noticed a performance hit trying to use them. But again, this is the first build with this emulation stuff in there. We could see it improve dramatically between now and when the update ships at the end of next year.
Yeah, so my experience was it was nice to go to the store and see something like Photoshop Elements 2021. I'm still in 2019. And you can install the free trial. Like before, that wasn't an option. It would be like you can install to other devices. So you can download it, install, and it launched and it worked. Like I was able to go into Photoshop Elements. That's huge. I was never been able to do that before. As soon as I went to go edit a photo, loaded up the photo, but then I cropped it, and then it's like error, and like it crashed. So it is baby steps. But so far, another example was Rocket League. So I used to be able to play Rocket League on the Surface Pro X because it was a 32-bit x86 game, and it performed beautifully, actually. A lot of the 32-bit x86 games actually do run very well on Surface Pro X, partly because of this GPU. And I have posted before, screenshots of all of the games I have installed in the Pro X, and it's significant. Now, they're mostly side scrollers, some arcade stuff, although Borderlands 2 on there. And so I was able to install now Rocket League. So again, progress. But then I went to go launch it, and then just like literally nothing happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely, I feel like, of course, people are going to be, say, and they're right. If this was Apple, everything would have just worked. And that's probably true. But, as we said,
Yeah.
there's a lot more going on with Windows. The challenge Microsoft has is a lot more difficult.
Also,
but
the tech each operating system uses to actually get those apps running is different as well. macOS is translating the Intel apps to ARM on the fly, which is why the performance on it is actually quite a bit better, in addition to the fact that the M1 is apparently a beast. But on Windows, that Microsoft isn't translating them on the fly, they're emulating them. So it's running, the stuff that it would need on Intel behind the scenes, and that's why it takes so long to get going, and that's why performance isn't as good, because it's not being translated, it's being emulated, and there is a difference. Here's the thing with Windows 10 on ARM. I think this is fine, because for most people using a PC, we've talked about this many times, and it's the reason why 10X exists and all of this good stuff. But most people are using a browser, maybe Office, maybe Spotify, and that's about it. Everything else they're doing in the browser. If they're using WhatsApp on their PC, they're using it in a browser. If they're using I guess you could use Teams or Slack as well, but you can also get those in the browser as well. Many web apps exist these days. A lot of people are just working in the browser, and if your workflow is that, then ARM PCs are fantastic. I would recommend an ARM PC over an Intel PC if that's your workflow. It's just when it comes to like actual like professional creative use and stuff, that's where ARM really falls down on the Windows side. Yeah. On the macOS side, it's going to be amazing apparently, but on Windows you can't recommend an ARM PC. Whether it's the Pro X or any other, the Galaxy Book S, if you're a creative who does video editing or drawing and stuff, because the software just isn't there yet. If it was all compiled for ARM, it would be a different story, but we're not there, and we probably won't ever get there fully. Maybe in the future, like we'll see. Adobe is supposed to be bringing their Creative Suite along to ARM natively, which will be a huge boost for creatives in that department. But it's everything else. It's like, because it's not just Adobe, right? There's like AutoCAD. There's so many different creative programs and engineering programs that just will never make the jump to ARM. And that's the problem I think Windows is always going to face.
Yep. And someone's talking about games. Yeah, games is something I'm going to be looking at over the next few days. I was trying to use this a lot more last night. I tend to use the Pro X because I'm on a desktop right now. I use Pro X usually at nighttime when I go onto the couch, want to put the TV on, I grab the Pro X in my lap, and it's why it's one of my favorite computers to use. It's just it's a really good lap computer. I know, unless you have short legs like Mary Jo Foley, but it's the problem last night was my cat was very insistent. I got a new blanket, and I had the blanket on my legs, and she's very insistent that that's her bed now. And so she kept pushing out my Pro X, like, get that out of the way. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'm not testing tonight. So, but games are something I want to try. But one of them was, what's the game now? I always forget the Gun Bro one. It's one of my favorite. Broforce. Mm-hmm. Broforce is one of my favorite games ever. And so that was also available in 32-bit, and now it's like 64-bit. I forgot what it is, but it's in the store. And I was like, okay, because now basically how the store works, the store got smart. This is one of my criticisms with ARM initially, which was it didn't filter based on the processor. So if you had an ARM chip and you browse the store, you'd see something like Halo and be like, yeah, install it. And of course you can't. Then they got smart only a couple months later. It was really nice. And basically now the store only shows you stuff you can directly install on your computer. Yeah. You can still like do a direct search sometimes and bring it up, but that's how it mostly works. But I couldn't install Broforce for some reason. It just wouldn't let me, even though it's x64 and some other x64 stuff like Photoshop Elements 2021 would install. Also, though, conversely, I actually own Photoshop Elements 2019. I haven't upgraded. And when I went to my library, and because Photoshop, Adobe is, they hide last year's version basically as soon as a new one comes out. But it's still in your library. You just have to go look for it to re-download it. And for some reason, I went to go re-download it and it just would error out. I'm like, oh, okay. Luckily, there's the free trial to try, but I was curious if the older version would either work or be better or that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's something we'll look at over the next few days to see how it works, but it does seem pretty hit and miss right now.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
There's a few people in the comments saying, no, you don't buy $1,000 computer for browsing the web. I disagree. I think it depends. It depends on your budget, of course. It also depends on how nice you want the web browsing PC to be. The Surface Pro X is the best Chromebook I've ever used. It's an absolutely fantastic web browser that can do some Win32 stuff as well if you need it to in those snap moments. But for the most part, I'm using that with web applications in a web browser. And the Pro X is amazing. I absolutely love it. And I spent £1,500 on the silver one with an SQ2. And I think it one of the best Surface Pro stuff that's ever made. But because I'm limiting my workflow to something that device can do really well. If I was trying to use things like Premiere Pro and trying to edit video and trying to do all of the heavy workload stuff that my Surface Book 3 and my Studio do, then the Surface Pro X becomes an unhappy experience that isn't worth the $1,500. But if you're doing, if the $1,500 or pounds gets you what you need that device to do, then what's the problem? Like, you can't say you shouldn't be buying $1,000 laptops for browsing the web. Well, don't buy an iPad Pro then, because I don't want to use tablet apps all the time on my laptop. But that's what the iPad Pro is. Yeah, people buy an iPad Pro and use it as a laptop all the time because it can do laptop stuff, even though it's not the best laptop out there.
Yeah, I mean, there are again different markets and different uses for things. Microsoft will say on record, I've mentioned this numerous times, 50 to 60% of Windows usage across desktop and laptop is in the browser.
Yeah.
And I'm using a Core i9 64 gigs 2080 GPU. I can attest to that. Most of my usage is in the browser. Now, on occasion, I will need a GPU, like for instance, if I do want to do some serious gaming. If I actually video edited, I could use that for that too, but I don't video edit. So when people talk about the M1 processor, I talked about this the last podcast. I don't care that it can do 4K video editing. I don't video edit. That's not a selling point. What I do care about is having LTE. I care about inking. I care about the 2-in-1 form factor where I can flip around the keyboard where it's nice and light. I care about having really good battery life. I like the Surface experience, and I need Windows apps. And so, but yeah, I live in Edge, but I also use a lot of the Microsoft ecosystem, whether it's going to be Office, whether it's Teams, it's Skype. These are things I use, as well as multimedia stuff. But telling people, I really hate the condescension. I can't.
Condescending.
Condescending attitude of people who tell others what they should spend their money on.
Yeah.
First of all, there's a demographic for people with money who want premium hardware.
Yeah.
You may not be in that class,
right.
And I'm sorry. I wish you the best of luck financially. It took me a long time to get to where I am in life and have the extra cash basically to buy things. But to say that market doesn't exist or shouldn't be catered to is really just ignorant. And Apple, who people keep bringing up, proves the point.
Exactly.
Like literally, all their hardware is technically overpriced.
Yeah, considerably.
But people feel it's worth it because they're happy.
Yeah.
Well, what do you call that? I mean, so I get some of you may want a $500 device just for web browsing. Fair. But that doesn't mean that and to be clear, my Surface Pro X, I don't just use it for web browsing. I use it for email. I use it for Teams. I use it for Slack. I use it for Skype. I use it for Telegram a lot. I use it for Twitter when I have Twitter. I now use it for gaming. I use it for watching YouTube live when I'm traveling, or Hulu, or playing movies while I'm on the airplane because it's a gorgeous 13-inch screen that is super thin and fits into a tiny bag. These are the reasons I use it. It's got really good audio. It's got LTE, so I can connect when I'm in the cab or going to the airport. I can work wherever I want to. These things aren't necessarily important to everyone. and that's totally fine. But to deny that there's a market for that kind of thing is really silly. I mean, just the fact that a lot of first line workers, people who work out in the field, that is their job. They're not running Photoshop and
Right.
CAD
Yeah.
if working at a realtor or on an engineering line, or they're not doing those kind of things. There does need to be. I was just going to say quickly, I mean, the market for 4K video editing is important, and that should absolutely be met.
But it's tiny.
But doesn't mean every device needs to be able to do 4K video editing. And it's like, that's why I don't get a Mac, the M1.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to lose inking. I'm going to lose touch. I'm going to lose LTE. I'm going to lose my Windows apps. It's like, what am I gaining? Like, I'm not gaining anything.
So someone here saying, if the Surface Pro X is for pros, it needs to be more than a browser. Everyone has that one app that they need that can't just be browser based. Well, that's more of an issue with marketing with the Surface Pro X. I've always said that the Pro X should not be a Surface Pro device. It should just be the Surface X. I've always said that because I think that really aligns it better with the target demographics it's really targeting. But Microsoft seems to sort of mix the messaging here and try to push it to creatives, and I really think that's a mistake. At this point where Windows 10 ARM is today, they really shouldn't be trying that. Maybe in a year's time when Adobe's Creative Suite's on the platform natively, that will be a different story. But as of right now, I would not recommend the Pro X to a creative. I would recommend the Pro X to somebody who works in an office or somebody who works from home and is doing, administrative based work or stuff like that, because I know people who work in an office, sit at a desk all day, they work in Microsoft Office, and they get paid more than me. And, their workflow would be benefited by an ARM device running Windows 10 on ARM or with a Pro X, because better battery life, and, Office on Windows 10 on ARM is natively compiled for the most part. If you're in the browser, if you're doing email, all of that, it's all just native on Windows 10 on ARM, and it's beautiful. And you get the all-day LTE, so if you are like an assistant to someone, or you're traveling a lot, you get that internet everywhere, and it's always beneficial to you and stuff. That's who I think the Pro X should be aimed at. It shouldn't be aimed at professionals, and I do agree that Microsoft sort of messed that up a bit, I guess, when they announced the Pro X and showed someone drawing on it and stuff. It's like, this isn't that device, is it? That's what the standard Pro's for. But oh well.
Yeah, someone's saying, I understand all that, but there are much cheaper devices that do all that for less, and it puts but no.
Well, hang on. Here's the comparison. The iPhone 12 Pro Max just came out, and it has a great processor and it has a good camera, but it runs iOS. It's a far less customizable device than my Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, which costs around the same price, but does way more. Or actually, I can get a phone way cheaper than that, the Galaxy S20 FE for $600, which does, from a software perspective, way more than that iPhone does. It's like you can't make that comparison. If you don't have the budget for these high-end premium things, that's fine. But they shouldn't not exist as a result of that. People want to spend different money on doing different things. I'm happy to spend $1,000 on a Pro X. You're probably not. In that case, spend $500 on a HP or a Dell that can do what you need it to do, because you can get that bang for your buck. But not everybody needs to do that.
Yeah. And finally, I just say, not every device that needs to come out. Like, I get if you look at the Pro X and you're like, I want that device, but I need a better processor. I get that. Yes. But just don't buy the Pro X. I don't really understand this idea of that device doesn't do what I need it to do. Microsoft needs to make it do what I need it to do. On a certain level, there is that feedback that's important. And if a lot of people say that, that's true. At the same time, there are a lot of alternatives out there, and you can go buy them. I see, that we'll talk about Surface Duo in a bit too, but a lot of people they're going to eventually get rid of the dual screens and just have a single foldable. And I'm like, they're not. I guarantee you that will never happen. They may come out with another device that has a foldable display, but the Surface Duo, it's in the name. Duo has two screens. It's going to go. They're not going to turn to Surface Monofold. But the whole theory that they have behind dual screens, is based around the Duo. But the thing is, if you're just I wish a Duo was a foldable display and it was basically like the Galaxy Fold, go buy the Galaxy Fold. Yeah. It's already there. Why should Microsoft go remake the Galaxy Fold to make you happy for some weird reason? I don't understand this. I love, we talk about iPads a lot, right? So I love the iPad hardware. Every time I go to the store and I see one, I'm like, damn, they really know how to nail hardware. And every time I bought one, it collects dust. I doesn't fit into my workflow. Now, do I use as an opportunity to trash the iPad and call everybody else who uses the iPad idiots and morons? And you're not a power user, which I just yelled at some people in comments about that because I hate that phrase. It's such a, again, condescending nonsense term. But like, no, that's not the case. It's clear the iPad is amazing hardware. It's very good. A lot of people actually do enjoy using it. It's not for me. And it's fine. And I'm not even asking Apple, be like, make it better, Apple. Make it more like a laptop. Like, no, I just will go buy something else. And if Apple wants to eventually change it, I'll look at it again. But like, this isn't the internet thing where people get very like me, versus acknowledging that there are other people in this world who have different needs, requirements, and actually do enjoy some of this stuff. And it's okay.
It's so strange. Like Windows 10 on ARM only really has this uphill battle because it has to hold on to all this legacy stuff. Windows on ARM makes so much more sense on Windows 10X, which we'll get to in a bit, because Windows 10X has that level of expectation. It doesn't have Win32 programs to begin with, so there's no Win32 programs it needs to emulate. You are forced to use native ARM applications on Windows 10X, or a web browser, which are also natively, it's native compiled anyway, so there's no problem there. Which, is what Chrome OS does. I can't believe Chrome OS wasn't an ARM native platform from the beginning, because that's like the perfect place for that, because it's all web. Just make a web browser that's ARM compatible. There you go, you're good to go. But for some reason, they only just got around to doing that in the last year or so, I think. Either way, like when Windows 10X comes out, I really do hope we start seeing Windows 10X on ARM devices, because that's where ARM on Windows will be acceptable, because it's a platform that's already stripped back to the bare bones, where you're not running legacy Win32 programs anyway, because you can't. It's not an ARM limitation. It's just the technology, the core components that powered those old programs just isn't there anymore. I would love to see a Surface Pro X with Windows 10X. I just would. And, it'd be the same price. You're not going to get it cheaper because it's running Windows 10X. It'll still be $1,000 and up. It would be an expensive web browsing operating system. That's basically what Windows 10X is. But I would love the Surface Pro X even more if it had 10X on it than Windows 10. I like Windows 10, don't get me wrong. 10X on the Pro X is my dream device. That's what I want. That would make the Pro X perfect, in my opinion.
And some people bring up how this argument can be basically distilled down to like, why buy a BMW when you can just buy a Ford? And it's true, right? I mean, again, like I bought a Tesla a few years ago. Like it's actually more expensive than most cars in its class. And BMW owners would argue my money would have been better spent on the quality of a BMW than on a Tesla. And people who have like a Honda would have been like, you get more for your money out of the Honda than a Tesla. And technically that's true, but the Tesla does stuff I wanted it to do. And I was willing to compromise for the things I wanted. So, this stuff is, I don't know, it's very contentious. We all agree Windows 10 and ARM could be better. We all agree Qualcomm's processors could be better. We all agree emulation could be better. There's no disputing that. No one's saying it's perfect, far from it. But at the same time, it's weird when people are like, you enjoy that? You shouldn't enjoy that.
You should have bought
That's what it's
something
really
for
coming
cheap.
down to. You should have bought something else. Like, how dare you actually enjoy that? Because, someone had a good question that, and I forgot the person's name. It was basically about heat regarding the Pro X and inking. Oh yeah, here it is. How about temperature? I need a note-taking device, but I find that the Surface Pro i7 is just too hot for comfort. Well, the Pro X fit the bill for this. So I would say there's two things to that. Yes, the Pro X does not get hot. It literally will never get hot. No matter what you throw at it, you'll feel a little bit of warmness on the Mac, but not hot. It actually feels nice. It's more, not even, cell phones usually get hotter. So it's perfect for that. And it's got a really good pen. I love inking on the Pro X. I would also say, though, the Surface Pro Core i5 could be an option, too. That's a fanless system, and it's not going to run as hot. That said, if you push it hard enough, you're still going to get that hot spot on the back. It does get a little bit warmer. The Pro X will always run cooler than that, but that's an interesting option if, say, you need a little bit more app compatibility, or you need a little bit faster process. The processors are kind of similar in some ways. Or you need the LTE and the Pro X, right? I always tell people you should buy the Pro X because you need an always connected device.
Yeah.
If the LTE is irrelevant, maybe look at other
Well,
devices.
that's likely going to change in January with the new Pro 8,
Right, with the Pro.
which I guess we can talk about that now.
Yeah, we might as well. Since we're going here.
Yeah, so obviously we talked about this a bit before, but earlier this week I published basically everything I'm hearing for the first half of 2021 from Windows and Surface. We'll talk about the hardware first. So in January, mid-January, I'm expecting Microsoft to announce and start shipping the next Surface Pro. I don't know if it would be called the Surface Pro 8 because it's such a minor upgrade over the existing Surface Pro, or they might do something like what they did with the new Pro X. They didn't call it the Surface Pro X 2, they called it the Surface Pro X and with SQ2 if you really want to look into it. But we'll see what they do. I don't know the actual marketing name, but for now, let's just call it the Pro 8. Surface Pro 8 will externally be identical. We've talked about this before. Same size screen, same thick bezels, same magnesium chassis, no expandable SSD. That's all. That's just not there. They've not done that this year. All the changes will be on the inside. So we're expecting 11th gen Intel processors, up to 32 gigs of RAM, and Intel Iris Xe graphics, which will be quite significant because the Xe graphics in this generation provides quite a significant GPU performance boost over what was in the 10th gen chips, or with the 10th gen chips rather. So that's going to be quite interesting for creatives, which is what the Surface Pro 7 and 8 and stuff, that's kind of who they're targeting, creatives and whatnot. So that's going to be actually quite a nice upgrade. I think if you're coming from a Pro 6 or a Pro 7, you actually might want to consider the Pro 8, even though externally it's the same, because that 11th gen chip and the Intel Xe graphics, they're quite significant. I mean, Dan knows more about 11th gen and Xe than me, but I think I'm right in what I'm saying, right, Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we're expecting with the Pro 8. And again, 32 gigs of RAM, so if you really are a prosumer, somebody's using, power tools and whatnot, then 32 gigs of RAM will be an option for you as well. The one thing I am hearing that's weird, and I don't know if I'm able to confirm this, it might only launch for commercial markets. I don't know if consumers will be able to buy one straight away. I assume they will. I mean, I'm not 100% sure on that, but we'll have to wait and see come January. So that's the only hardware launched in January. I did say in the last episode, I think, that the laptop 4 would launch alongside it. I was wrong. That was never the plan. I apologize. The plan for the laptop 4 is that will launch a few months later, likely in April, sometime in the spring, April time. And that will, again, be externally identical to the Surface Laptop 3. There might be a different color. Instead of cobalt, I think ice blue will be the option. But all of the other colors and Alcantara options and whatnot and metal options will be the same. The difference is this time, again, will be 11th gen in the 13-inch with Intel Xe graphics, up to 32 gigs of RAM. And in the 15-inch, we'll have new AMD Ryzen 5 and Ryzen 7 chips. Likely based on the Mobile 4000 series. It could be 5000. Again, I don't know for sure because thinking about the time, when are the 5000 chips being announced? Do we know that?
The which ones?
The AMD Ryzen 5000 chips? Are they 5000?
5000 are desktops. They haven't been announced for.
Okay, so
yet.
it'll probably almost definitely be 4000 then. I haven't had that confirmed, but just looking at the schedule and whatnot, I think 4000 makes sense. And 4000, once again, is a massive improvement over the Ryzen 3000 series in the Surface Laptop 3. I am told these will be Surface Edition chips again, so Microsoft will be doing its own customizations, minor ones, I imagine, to improve the performance of these slightly. So it will be interesting to see that. But the biggest change to the Surface Laptop 4, is what I'm hearing, is that for the first time, the AMD chips will be coming to the 13-inch variant as well. I think it will only be the Ryzen 5 series, but if that's something you wanted in the Laptop 3, you didn't want the 15-inch because it's just too big, but wanted AMD, you should be able to get the Ryzen 5 chip in the 13-inch laptop in April. So that's quite a big deal, I think, because especially for AMD fans who like smaller laptops. We'll have to wait and see what the prices are and stuff. I assume they'll be similar, if not the same as the Laptop 3 and whatnot. But yeah, I'm excited for the AMD stuff because the AMD chips in Laptop 4 should be much improved over the AMD Ryzen 3000 series and the Laptop 3.
Yeah, that chip was not impressive at all. I couldn't recommend it, whereas the Intel one was better. The Intel 11th for Surface Pro should be interesting because in my experience, you're getting significantly better performance around.
Yeah.
What is it, like 20%, 30% for the CPU and upwards of 70% for the GPU, thanks to Intel Xe. And then you're also getting better battery life, which it's just something you don't typically see. It's usually like, oh, they jacked up the core processor, the megahertz, and so it gets worse battery life, or maybe it breaks even, right? Typically, most Surface devices have been improving performance, but the battery life has broken even. It's basically maintained, maybe a little bit better, a half hour here or there. But like using a Dell XPS 13, I think it was like 13 hours on the synthetic bench battery mark. And in real life, I was getting like well over 8 hours, sometimes 10 hours of just like real world usage on that stuff. So this may be the first real sort of performance gains on a Surface Pro device, along with that battery life where it finally gets to the point, because Surface Pro has always been on the edge. For some people, it's good enough. It gets you close to 7 hours, which is like all day.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of people, it's like, especially they're like hardcore using it, it peters out around 5 hours or 4.5 hours, and they have to recharge it. This time, we may actually see it. If you add like an extra 2 hours to that makes a huge difference. So fingers crossed that's going to be good. And yeah, the laptop stuff. I'm still a little disappointed that we're not hearing about, slightly larger displays for the Surface Pro series. I think, just thinning out those bezels a little bit, going with a newer custom display would have been a nice thing. Hopefully also, and you haven't heard anything about the keyboard, right?
No, I haven't anything. So the theory was that perhaps they'll update the keyboard type cover with the wirelessly charging pen support and stuff, because they could do that for the standard Pro series. I think it would obviously depend on what the output of the actual type cover connector is on the standard Pro, because the type cover connectors are different on the Pro X and the standard Pro. I haven't heard if that's actually happening, but I would love to see that, because then it's at least something different for the standard Pro line, right? But we'll have to wait and see. But the exterior designs will be the same. I think they're doing that because COVID hit and enterprises have accessories that are built for the specific design of the standard Pro that spans back 5 years now. And changing that up during a pandemic means enterprises have to buy all these new accessories and design new accessories if they've got their own custom ones. And I have a feeling that's why they've just decided to not do that this year. Because we do know that they were prototyping a new design for the Intel Surface Pro. That's been rumored for ages. And it was supposed to launch, I guess with the Pro 8, and it hasn't. So, yeah, I think they literally just did it because of COVID, which is a shame, but there you go. The other thing I'm hearing regarding hardware is that in February, Microsoft is planning to roll out the Surface Duo in a handful of more markets, and I really do mean a handful. I can count them on one hand. It's not a global rollout. It won't be rolling out everywhere. It is a very limited amount of markets, but it will be rolling out to more, which is good news for the Surface Duo, I guess, because I wrote back in, I want to say November. No, earlier than that, October, I think it was. Saying that I'm hearing that the Surface Duo won't roll out to 2021, and only if it does well enough in the US. If they're running it out in February, probably means it did well enough in the US for that to happen. And by well enough, obviously, that's an internal number. That might not be, they might have only sold 10,000 units.
No one's saying, we're not saying it outsold expectations or it's a huge hit or anything like that. But I think that's a safe assumption, because conversely, say this doesn't happen, right? It just doesn't get released. I mean, there's actually two takeaways from that. One is it just didn't sell well enough, and they're not rolling out to other markets because the return rate was too high, the failure rate was too high, and it just doesn't make economic sense. The second option, if they don't ship, is, well, maybe it's because Surface Duo 2 is coming out later that year, which we are kind of expecting, actually, that could happen. And they don't want to bunch these up too close. Like, that's true too. But if these do come out to those markets, I mean, I think you have to take one off the table, right? That it's sold well enough where they don't consider it a financial risk to roll it out to other markets, even if in very limited quantities.
Yeah, and it will be limited quantities as well. And I don't think, after this rollout, I don't think they'll be making any more. I think they'll just be heads down on Duo 2. So I think the Duo is going to become a rare device because, I think they are moving on quickly because the Duo 2 is really where the ball will start getting rolling with this form factor. And I'm hearing the Duo 2 they're hoping for fall 2021. We'll have to see, of course, if that actually happens or not. Schedules change, things get pushed back all the time or brought forward in some cases. So we'll have to wait and see about that. Regarding, since we're on the subject of Duo, it's December, 11th now? We still don't have the December updates. I figured I'd give you an update on that. I am hearing that that will be rolling out sometime next week, so starting week of December 14th. I'm hearing it might even be on this like later in the week of next week. So, and the reason why it's not out yet is because there was an internal blocking bug that took a little bit longer for them to fix. I haven't heard that if they have actually fixed it. The last I heard was that it will be rolling out sometime late next week. So I assume they have finally solved that. But that's why the update is not out yet. They haven't just forgotten about us or abandoned the device, which is what some people are like. Where's the update? I thought it was supposed to be out the first week of every month, and that's kind of, I think, true. But this month they had to delay it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if they could have just rolled out the security patch and called it a day, right? But the point
they have
is,
actual bug fixes and stuff they're working on. So.
Yeah, they actually are trying to improve this device and make it better. And they're still new to Android, and it's still, I'm looking at my, Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, great phone. It's on the November security patch. It hasn't received a December one. I don't expect it to get anything till maybe at the end of December. And that's Samsung, who are one of the better Android updaters. If you're on LG, good luck. OnePlus has been good too. But Microsoft. So nice segue into Surface Duo 3 months later. So I was hoping to write this kind of mini re-review with the December update because we are expecting even more bug fixes, possibly around gestures even. But I had to go with what we did since it was the 10th. So there's a lot going on in this article in terms of what there is. And I didn't want to just do a standard review again because my original review is pretty in-depth as is. So I went through the good, so let's break it down. So stability and performance, is it better today than it was when it first came out? Yeah, dramatically. Everything from the gestures to the performance of it is better, it's smoother, it's a little bit more reliable. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, it still has stuff to be fixed, but it is improving and they are squishing those bugs. Even dumb things like the wallpaper would randomly disappear has been fixed. One of the things that bothered me was when I would use Edge, you'd use Edge throughout the day and then it goes into the background and suspended, and then you go to hit the icon again, and this is after suspended, it kind of goes to sleep, and then you hit the Edge icon, it would take like 5 to 6 seconds for it to pop up. We've talked about this on the podcast. It had to do with older APIs and design things for older versions of Android, and the Edge team was supporting that, but that it kind of broke a bit when it came to the latest versions of Android. And so they eventually, I guess, I think you told me this, that they split off basically in the store, the version of Edge for Duo. And so that's fixed now. So Edge now, always responds when you click it. And I know these are low bar things to be fixed, but that's kind of not the point, right? These were the issues that people were complaining about when these devices first came out. So progress is progress. I don't care if it's a lot or a little. It is what it is. The keyboard, so Swift key has been getting improved, of course. It did get the thumb keyboard. So it always had a thumb keyboard in the when you used it sort of a Nintendo DS mode, the compose mode, they call it, where it's folded. But they've added it now, so when you span an app, the keyboard can span with it, and it gives you thumb keyboards. And that's actually really, really cool. It's such a neat, when you're using it, it feels like, oh, I'm really using a device for the future here, because it feels so weird, but it works well. It's a little bit disorientating because you're typing with both hands, but you're looking usually on one side of the screen, usually the right. And so it's a little strange, but it's cool. They also added, of course, the ability to move the space bar. Move the cursor with the space bar, which, is very useful for going back and re-editing stuff. So that's kind of cool. Not a lot of new features. We did get screen time, which I know Zach is a big fan of. And you can now pair websites using Edge as app pairs, meaning you can basically take two websites, save them to the Duo, and then launch them at the same time. And I actually find that pretty useful. If you go to a lot of websites, first thing you're checking in the morning, or you want to check, you can always launch two websites or something like that, or a website and app. So that's kind of cool. We did see discounts, $200 discounts through Microsoft, $300 through Best Buy happens if you activated the device. There's also the $700 trade-in deal. I know it's an expensive device. $200 off still doesn't make it better for a lot of people, but for some, it it made the difference. It's like, okay, now I'll jump in on that. Verizon began selling it online, business users. It's not like a Verizon, you know, branded device, but they are offering it through their kind of business channels, which something AT&T is also selling it as well.
I am told in the UK when it rolls out here, some carriers will be carrying it as well. So they have made deals and whatever agreements with carriers elsewhere. So they, and honestly, if I'm honest, I've seen more adverts for the Duo on Microsoft's YouTube channel than I have any other Surface. They keep putting them out. It's like, is do one better or something is one of the taglines.
Right.
They actually are advertising it, and they've got like funky 30-second ads, which I assume are airing on US TV. I don't know. But yeah, they are advertising the thing, which is a surprise.
Yeah, a new one with Marshawn Lynch, I believe that's his name, a football player, came out.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fun too. So yeah, they are advertising. I should have even mentioned that. That's a good point too. In terms of third party and accessories, we saw new Surface Duo bumper colors, of course. Barnes & Noble's Nook app does two column support. It's not technically Duo support, but it's a very good app and it works well. So you have Google Playbooks, Barnes & Noble's Nook app, and of course Amazon Kindle. And there's also a couple ebook readers that also do the two column stuff, and it works very well. And I'll talk about that a little bit later about why I use the Surface Duo. Kensington, of course, has the side hip case, which is okay, but Google's Gboard doesn't work as a keyboard really. I mean, it does. You can use it, just some stuff gets cut off. But the handwriting recognition box works very well with a Surface Pen. So if you ever want to use Surface Duo and the pen just for basically doing stuff, that worked very well. Which goes to show you sort of how the technology can kind of evolve. Microsoft Launcher is no longer tied to monthly updates, which is nice through the store. So I go through a bunch of stuff there. Let's talk about and it's a head turner. Every time I go to like a supermarket, or they always have to scan my frequent shopper card, and it's a chance to have the Duo out. Everybody's immediately like, what the hell is that thing? And they're like, is it a phone? Is it a tablet? And, basically everything that we've had to go through on this podcast. But it's a head turner. I mean, and not everybody wants attention, right? Not everybody wants that experience. I don't mind because I love talking about tech, but it captures interest, so much interest that Time Magazine recognized it as one of the best inventions of 2020. So it is gaining, a lot of interest. I'll also say that even though I have the iPhone 12 mini, which is a better smartphone, I hate using that in public because I have to wear a mask everywhere in public now. And the iPhone only has Face ID, and it sucks because you have to constantly let it time out and then enter your PIN, and it's dumb. I hate entering my PIN in public every time too. Whereas the Duo, the fingerprint reader, it's genius. So I use the Duo actually out in public way more than I do my iPhone. There you go. All right, let's talk about the bad and the ugly stuff. So I didn't separate these two out because it's obviously arbitrary. But
that goddamn USB-C port.
Yeah, that's the number one, right? So I didn't really rank these, but that would be the number one. So surprisingly, Duo doesn't have a lot of hardware flaws, or design flaws, I should say. I'm not saying, I know NFC is super important to you, it doesn't have NFC. I know that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual design engineering flaws. There's not a lot of points of failure on this device. Sometimes the hinges, people have had problems with those, but it's pretty rare. But the Type-C port is definitely, that was overlooked. So if you don't know, the Type-C port, the device is so thin that it can barely have a Type-C port. They made it any thinner, it couldn't have one. But it's also so thin that apparently it doesn't support the Type-C port very well. Meaning if you plug it in and you do it a lot and you add a little bit of pressure, you can basically crack the outer part of it. Still works, but obviously that shouldn't happen. I said to use the Mag-C adapter. So if you like those, it's a little adapter goes in there. Now it's just a magnetic charger. You shouldn't have to do that. So this is obviously a major design flaw. I hope they fix it soon. Zach has it. I don't have it on my device, but because Zach didn't listen to me. So
I refuse to put that thing.
Yeah, I get it because it's not cool looking to have the little adapter on there. But I will say because I'm kind of lazy.
I
I
tell you
like
what, I will say though, once so the USB-C port isn't like cracks. Like there's a tiny crack, but it's not like come off, because I've seen some where there's like actual chunks missing from it. Mine hasn't done that yet, luckily. But with the crack now there, it's a very faint crack. It's kind of taken, because like when you get a new device, you want to baby it and you don't want to take it out. You want to like lick up. What now I've got that crack, I kind of just use it as a normal phone now, and I'm so much more relaxed using it. Sure, I have a few minor dents and stuff on the plastic trim, which is one of my complaints. I think the trim should be metal next year, or this year. Yeah, I guess next year. With Duo 2, the trim should be metal, because I think it's a little bit more durable than this. What is it, like some plasticky? I can't remember what they call it now. Polycarbonate, yeah.
Kind of,
It's like butter, really. You can blow on it.
Some kind of resin, yeah. It's meant to assist with reception,
yes,
for
right,
Wi-Fi and cellular.
But you can also get away with a metal trim and just put antenna bands around it, which
you can. I'm curious. I'm sure there's a trade-off with that.
I think it's thickness. I think it's thickness, because if you think about it,
there's all sorts of things. There's thickness. There's weight.
Yeah,
you're adding now weight to the device, and
right.
Duo isn't heavy. Duo is not light, but it doesn't feel heavy.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel heavy at all. But I imagine, because if you take the whole side of it, which is now this resin and can allow reception for the radio waves to go through, and you make that metal and then just restrict it to little metal, little antenna lines, there has to be a trade-off there in terms of performance of reception.
Yeah,
I'm not an engineer. It just seems logical to me, because you went from it's 100% reception to 10% little slots, right? So yeah. I don't know, but the point is taken. I think, I wouldn't say no to it if they can get. And to be honest, some people have complained that the reception on Duo isn't amazing as is, at least for Bluetooth. Bluetooth seems to be the sticking point. Gestures are still finicky. So I just said they improved the gestures and things have gotten better there. I would still say
they're not perfect.
Things could be a little bit better. Yeah, like for instance, I miss how on Launcher you can configure the gestures. So like you can swipe down on the middle of the screen to bring up.
I missed
or
that.
You could do 2-finger swipes. Yeah, you could do 2-finger swipe up to do something like. Those are completely missing here. So gestures can definitely be better, a little bit more reliable. They're getting there. I believe they'll do it. Still can be improved though. Camera is still bad. I mean, there was a little bit of hope that maybe they'll do some kind of computational AI stuff. After all, the Pixel camera hardware is not amazing.
Yeah.
The Pixel camera AI and software is. That's what makes it such a unique camera. In theory, Microsoft could do that, but that's not a trivial thing. I was hoping maybe they would, but that obviously hasn't happened. I would stop expecting that to happen. It's still, in my opinion, a fine camera for outside.
Yeah.
When I've been using it for travel, I've had no issues. But obviously it fails on things that move fast, indoors, at nighttime, low light, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty terrible. I haven't seen an appreciable improvement in the image quality through these updates. But
it's still really slow to actually take a photo. Or when you press the button, a lot of the time you'll press it and you'll wait at least 2 seconds before it actually snaps the photo.
Yeah, sometimes I've seen that happen before. But the performance of the camera has also been improved. In other words, the way it jumps between screens, when you close and flip the screens around to switch to the front, like all that, because it's doing a lot. When you turn the camera on the first time, it's actually very fast because it's just the front-facing selfie cam, basically. And that's fine. The issue is when you want to use it as a camera, world-facing, you then open up the displays on each other. It jumps to the other display, and then it actually switches a mode. It changes the focal point range. And so that whole process was very finicky based on the angles and how you're holding it. And they've improved that, and it's a lot faster, more reliable now. So
I'll tell you what, for me, the ugly for me above everything else has been the gyroscope in this. It's just not very good. It tries its best, but I think there's 2 gyroscopes in there stuff, and it has to like figure out which screen you're looking at and stuff. And for simple stuff, if I'm using it in dual screen and then I just flip to single screen, it knows how to do that. But if I'm trying to usually flip it around, I'm 70% of the time, it doesn't do what I need it to do. And with the camera, although you just said it's been improved for you, for me, I haven't noticed any improvements. The other day, I had to take a quick photo of something really quick. I was in a car and I had to take a photo. Pulled my camera out, double tapped the power button. I'm in dual screen mode at this point. So I'm like, all right, okay, here we go. So I moved it around to do it like that. And look, it's gone to the other side, so I can't press the button to take the photo. So look, it's too late. Let me turn it around. Now it's on the other side again. I can't take the photo. See, I'm so glad that actually did my problem right there on the camera. But the camera just doesn't know what to do for me. And this is easily fixed. Stop relying on the gyroscope and just put a switch screens button in the app. Just make it user manual. Just press a button, then it just automatically switches the camera, and it will not switch back until you press that button again. It's such an easy fix. Just do it that way. And Microsoft just for some reason is relying on that gyroscope, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, they're balancing a lot. Right? The device tries to do a lot, and so there's a lot of learning here. And hey, it's a Gen 1 device. It's a reason why I didn't recommend most people go buy unless you're just willing to take the risk. So there's that. I brought up where are the dual screen apps. So yeah, Microsoft's apps mostly are dual screen supportive. Some of their new ones like Bing, the new Bing Hub doesn't. Skype still doesn't. LinkedIn doesn't. Translator doesn't. And GroupMe doesn't. I mean, I could forgive GroupMe, Translator, probably even LinkedIn. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people are using those. LinkedIn, maybe though. I would like to see LinkedIn, but Translator and GroupMe, come on. I mean, I don't see that as a priority. Skype though, but we know Skype. Skype is this part of Microsoft we don't like talking about. But still, I mean, you would think, and again, that gets into. And of course, Google's apps haven't been optimized for dual screens yet, which is a shame. I'd like to see Maps optimized, Gmail optimized, and a few other ones. That said, the real value in Duo has actually been running two apps at the same time on each screen and basically jumping between them and switching information, copying, pasting, looking at something while responding to someone else. That multitasking ability is actually the real joy of using Surface Duo. The spanning dual screen apps are cool, but it's very funny. It gives you the same experience in a lot of ways of using a normal phone, which is you're monotasking now. The difference is sometimes you can see more information, you can do a little bit more, but it's only good if you're wanting to go into the app and stay in there for a while, what I call immersion. So it works very well for, say, like Amazon Kindle or Microsoft News. Say, like, I like to sometimes sit down and I'll like open up Microsoft News and go to span the app, and I'll just sit there for 15 minutes reading news stories, right? Like reading a newspaper. Having the dual screen full exposure that way, immersive experience is great. But for some apps, it really doesn't make sense. Like if you're going just to check like Telegram, we use Telegram a lot. I would love to have Telegram used as a dual screen app. At the same time, most of the time I'm in and out. Message comes in, sometimes I'm even just responding to the notification. If I open the app, oh yeah, okay, type a quick message and out. The time it would take me to span it and get the benefit, like it's not really there. I will say though, one feature I would like to see, and a lot of people have said this before, is to default open apps to spanning or single screen. So Kindle, like where I was just making the argument, some apps don't make sense to be spanning. Kindle makes sense to always be spanning. And so there should be a way to set Kindle so it always goes to dual screens. I'm sure that will come eventually, but still, there's been almost no third parties, no first parties are optimizing their apps.
I think it was wishful thinking to expect third parties to adopt the Duo, but I kind of was hoping Google would, just because of that partnership, which turns out to just be a standard Android OEM partnership. But but unfortunately not. But perhaps maybe with Android 11, or as Android 11 starts becoming the main version of Android, and other OEMs and whatnot start building devices that may have dual screens or may be a single screen that fold, perhaps you'll see developers update their apps to support spanning and taking advantage of these larger canvas spaces on devices like the Duo.
And that goes into that there's no Android 11 yet.
Yes.
I think it was a little wishful to be like, oh, they launched in September. Here comes Android 11 like 2 months later. That would have been a lot.
Yeah.
But you're hearing, what are you hearing for Android 11 right now?
So it's in early internal testing on the Duo one, which is good news. I think for a lot of if we're expecting new features, I think they will show up alongside the Android 11 release. I don't think we'll see any new features come to Android 10 specifically. to the Android 10 release rather. So yeah, Duo Android 11, it's in the works internally. I don't have an ETA for when that will start rolling out. It could be as soon as sometime maybe March, but we'll have to wait and see because this is the first time that I'm following along with a new version of Android for a Surface device by Microsoft. It's not following, like a cycle that I'm familiar with, so I haven't got a rough ETA for you. But it is in the works. I have been told that is the case, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question with, as my complaints about, special weather alert. Oh boy. It's a really interesting question with like, are we not seeing the dual screen apps, including Google's their own, because we're waiting on kind of like Android 11? I imagine I have a call coming in. That's what's going on. I'm trying to.
Who's calling you? Don't they know it's the podcast? Don't they know you're busy?
Well, my phone does. My Surface Duo does because it knows I'm on a podcast right now, so it turns off my notifications. My Samsung Watch, though, it's on the charger over there. It's like, and I'm like, what is making that noise? And it's like, oh, I know, call's coming in. That's fine.
Who calls
it
in
was just
2020?
Verizon. I know.
Okay.
Companies, yeah, companies call. But yeah, so like, is everybody waiting for Android 11? So if you don't know, Android 11 is supposed to deliver APIs and better support for, as Zach was saying, kind of dual screen apps, dual screen operating
and
system,
foldables in general,
and foldables, basically being more content aware of the different form factors. And so it kind of makes sense because I feel like to optimize an app now to do it, you have to probably do a little bit of like a lot more legwork and programming to get that, whereas Google's just going to give you those APIs with Android 11. And we always see that, right? When a new version of Android comes out, supports new features, there's always the lag of a few months before you see actual apps being updated to support that feature. There's a big complaint with the Pixel. It supported, what was it? Something to do with the face recognition and the security feature of it. But a lot of apps took many months, like the banking apps took many months before they actually enabled support for that hardware. So that may be the case. And considering how small the market is right now for Surface Duo, I think it's a little bit forgivable. But that's something to stick a pin in and watch. I will be coming back to Surface Duo in 3 more months, and we may actually have Android 11 at that point. I don't think too much is going to change in that 3 months, but we may start to see or hear a little bit more about that. But yeah, it's interesting.
We should set expectations. I don't think we shouldn't expect Android 11 to fix everything. Like, I don't want us to have that high expectation because, that's very easily not met. Let's just, fingers crossed that Android 11 brings some nice improvements and maybe a couple of new features. And if it does anything more than
Android
that,
11 then... there's not a lot in Android 11.
No,
I've linked to it in the article to our Android Central coverage. And it's not like some mad killer features in there. But presumably it could be better, right? So fingers crossed that's what happens. So go check that article out. Just real quickly in closing out, I did write in like the last section of it, basically like why I still use Duo. Because in front of me I have the iPhone 12 mini, I have a Samsung Galaxy 12 Ultra, all phenomenal phones and hardware that most people would benefit from. So Duo for me, and I talked about this on a podcast last time, it's basically turned into the modern PDA for me. The way I've configured it, I use BlackBerry Hub on there. I don't want to show my stuff on here because it's meetings and everything like that. But basically, one side, as a widget, is a calendar. And on the right side is my unified inbox through BlackBerry, which means it shows everything from Slack to Teams to GroupMe to Telegram to my multiple emails, SMS, phone calls. It all shows up there. When I open my device, I literally see what I have to do right now, my upcoming meetings, and I have a lot of them. And then on the right side, I see not notifications. I actually have a scrollable widget that lets me go through and see all my messages and things. And to me, that's been game changing. It's just been a device that helps me balance my work life. I can immediately catch up in the morning when I open. I immediately know what's going on. I see what's priority. It's been very helpful for my job. I read a lot more now on it. I'm grabbing my laptop less frequently, even the Pro X, because I just tend to do a lot more on this, especially on the couch. Though, like I'm using the Kindle app a lot. I'm reading comics on it. And so my reading has gone up a lot, and I love using it as like a Kindle. It's also really nice to hold. A lot of people pointed that out in comments because, like holding it like this is just, and Zach, you've seen this before, like holding it like this is just so comfortable and just, it's so cool to use it like that. And yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with it. Of course, it can be better. And I ended the review with saying it's still my review hasn't changed. It's still the dual screen phone of tomorrow that's not quite ready for today.
Yeah.
And that's still the case. My rating hasn't changed on it. It's most people shouldn't buy this unless you're an early adopter, you know what you're getting into. But I'm very happy with it. And I'm not interested really in going back to a single screen device as my main phone. So what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I really do love the Duo, and I am excited to see what they can do with Duo 2. I am expecting a better camera, maybe even a couple cameras. The NFC will be there as well, I'm told. Bluetooth 5.1 support will be there. Perhaps there's slightly bigger screens, slimming down the bezels ever so slightly. It won't be like edgeless like an iPhone or a Samsung, but there will be slightly thinner bezels, I'm told. And there's another thing I heard as well. Oh, so I see a lot of people talking about the processor. What processor will it use? I think that's still up in the air. I have heard whispers that it will be a Snapdragon 888, but it could also very easily be a Snapdragon 7 6 series as well. Only because that's what the Pixel did this year, and it's not really affected the Pixel 5 in any way. And that's the 700 series is great because you essentially get last year's flagship processor performance for way less, and it's more battery efficient. And the only downside really is that I think the GPU isn't as good. But for the Surface Duo, you're not really gaming on the Surface Duo anyway. And because of the efficiency, for a device like Duo, that is crucial because of how thin it is. And there's a fight for space in this device already with Duo 1 with its one camera. Adding a second camera and NFC and all of that stuff is going to reduce the internal space considerably. Which means a smaller battery, perhaps. So they have to get that battery back somewhere, and going for a Snapdragon 700 series processor, which will be next year's version when the Duo comes out, I guess, might remedy that so that the battery life is still as good as it is. Because the Duo actually has quite good battery life.
I was going to say that, yeah. And I mentioned that. I didn't really put it as a good, but I mentioned at the end that most people forget the Duo gets good battery life. Yeah. It's really weird. Yeah. It's the most counterintuitive thing. You're powering two AMOLED displays that are pretty high resolution. It's like, yeah, but
the battery's
good battery life. Yeah. I don't know. I love the Duo. I think it's great. I can't wait to see, but as I pointed out, all the caveats, it can be a lot better. And Surface Duo 2, I'm sure. And you've said this before. Surface Duo, what we have right now, is basically an older design. It was from 2018, basically, and they just want to get it out now because whereas what we expect for Surface Duo 2, it's like, all right, this is everything we've learned in that last year, plus we now have modern hardware, and that's what, that device is going to be. So it should be a lot more interesting.
Yep.
Very cool. All right, let's move on to, we're halfway done with the podcast.
Well, before we move on,
no.
Yeah, we need to talk about Surface, the actual Windows 10 and 10X stuff, because we didn't do that yet. What to expect from Windows 10 in 2021.
Okay.
So
everyone wants to know about Sun Valley, so go tell them.
So let's talk about all of that stuff. So the schedule for Windows 10 and 2021 is interesting because things are being reversed and flipped around and whatnot. So usually the last 2 years, the first release of the year has been a major update in the form of 2004 or 1903, I think it was in 2019. And then the full release has been a minor cumulative service style release that sits on top of the bigger release that came earlier in the year, 19H2 and 20H2. In 2021, that's being reversed. So the spring release, the first half of 2021, will see a minor Windows 10 desktop update come out. And this will be 21H1, but it's a servicing style release simply aimed at sort of priming Windows 10 for the bigger release coming in the fall, which we have talked about before, codenamed Cobalt /Sun Valley. There's multiple different code names for it now. And this update will sort of be focused really on business-related additions and whatnot, and under-the-hood performance improvements. Nothing groundbreaking, just like how 20H2 and 19H2 didn't introduce like huge new changes. Minor things here and there, some subtle UI updates and whatnot, but otherwise it's a safe bet for Microsoft to, so there's no issues or drastic changes that are going into Windows before this massive release coming in the fall. They need to have a rock, like a completely stable base, so they can deliver this Sun Valley stuff in the fall. Windows 10X is supposed to be launching in the springtime. I am told that as of yesterday, I think Windows 10X is done. Done in air quotes, that is. So there is a final build. I think it's 20279. They might increment that 1 or 2 builds. But otherwise, they're basically done. It's at the end of its development cycle, which means the next phase of Windows 10X begins, which is prepping the operating system for launch. So I guess in January, the final bits will go out to OEMs to start preloading onto hardware. But Microsoft is going to continue fixing Windows 10X with bug fixes and whatnot internally between now and when hardware starts shipping, which is supposed to be sometime in the spring. I don't know an exact time frame for that, perhaps May. So OEMs will start preloading the final bits. Then on day one, when you get your 10X device, you'll power it on and it will do an update, because that's the nature of Windows 10X. Is an online operating system. It will do stuff like that. You have to sign in with a Microsoft account. You have to be connected to the internet to set it up, I believe. But yes, 10X is done. The launch, I'm told, will be a low-key event. This isn't going to be like a drastic, like there's not going to be like a huge event with new Surface hardware of 10X and stuff. This is really going to be a muted event, a muted scenario where Microsoft makes it available to OEMs, and OEMs are allowed to start shipping the hardware in the spring. Microsoft will probably do a blog post saying, hey, you might start seeing 10X devices very soon. But otherwise, outside of that, I'm not expecting like a big bang. Here's the new version of Windows, blah, 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 because of the limitations that 10X has at launch. We've talked about this before, but Windows 10X will be launching without local Win32 support, which is a big deal and is... And it means Microsoft can't market 10X to a mainstream audience, because a mainstream audience with a Windows product is expecting to be able to run those legacy programs, and you can't do that on 10X. So this is why it's sort of a low-key launch, because Windows 10X next year is getting Win32 support, and that's when they can start going, all right, here's Windows 10X. It can do what you expect it to do now. Because this year, in 2021, it won't be able to do that. It's aimed specifically at low-end PCs targeted at commercial markets, which includes things like education establishments and enterprises. That's really where you're only going to see it on low-cost PCs. You're not going to see it on a flagship Dell or a flagship HP, or even a Surface device, I don't think. I've not heard of any Surface hardware with 10X coming in the springtime. There might be one in the fall, but I've not heard that far ahead, unfortunately. But... yes, that is what I'm hearing for 10X. So it's more or less done. They're now just doing final fixes and stuff, and it should start rolling out in the spring on third-party hardware, low-end third-party hardware from Microsoft's OEM partners. Windows 10 Sun Valley stuff, so that is the fall. But we should start seeing those bits inside of program builds in the next couple of months, because the Cobalt release is supposed to be done in June, I think. And it's supposed to be feature complete way before that. So I think late February, March time, I think it's supposed to be feature complete. So Microsoft needs to have all the bits that they're expecting, or most of the bits they're expecting to ship in the Sun Valley release done, or in testing at least, by February or late February. So next couple of months, we should start actually getting a good idea as to what this full release is going to look like. But there's a caveat to that, because of Sun Valley's schedule. The Cobalt development semester ends in June, but the update itself isn't coming out until October, so there's a lot of time between then. So what Microsoft is going to do is start working on a cumulative style update, I guess, a day one patch, but internally they call it I-21. It's like a significant patch that will sit on top of Sun Valley at launch. So you will, when you download the Sun Valley release, whatever they call it, the October update, I assume, you will actually get Sun Valley plus this cumulative update sitting on top of it, and that will add a couple more features, which I guess will be put into testing in the beta ring between June and October. But that is what I'm hearing for Windows 10 in 2021. It's going to be a big year with 10X and obviously the Sun Valley stuff. A lot of people are hoping for tablet mode improvements and stuff, and I'm hearing there'll be some tablet or touch improvements on Windows 10 desktop. 10X itself is an improvement for tablets, but I think the issue you're going to find is that you're not going to find any tablets with 10X, because at launch, I'm pretty sure it's clamshells only. I don't think Microsoft is allowing it to be something that you can just buy on a tablet. The other thing people keep asking me is, will Windows 10X launch for ARM PCs? Because the Win32 stuff isn't there, I'm told that yes, Windows 10X will launch for ARM PCs. But the problem, once again, is I don't know if you actually find any ARM PCs with Windows 10X, because Microsoft doesn't sell Windows 10X as something you could just preload onto hardware of your own choice. It's up to the OEMs. If an OEM wants to make a Windows 10X on ARM device, then I think they can do that. But there's no guarantee that they will. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But we will see Intel ones and all of that good stuff. But yes, hopefully I have more to share on the actual 10X UX and stuff, because it is almost the same as what we've seen from February and stuff. But there are some minor changes and whatnot, and some more limitations that have come to light since. Because now 10X is done, I can actually start asking people, all right, what's actually in the product? What can I talk about? Because there's always, as up until now, it's always been up in the air what will actually ship, what won't ship and stuff. So hopefully in the new year I'll start talking more about that. But that's my updates for Windows 10 in 2021. As I said, huge year on the horizon. Pretty exciting.
Very neat. It's going to be interesting to watch that unfold. Of course, we'll have to wait for those Windows Insider releases to start previewing that stuff. So hopefully we'll start seeing that in early 2021 though. Although we're already starting seeing it with some of the dev stuff. I should point out, by the way, and we kind of glossed over this, or I don't think you mentioned it, the release for that, the Windows Insider dev release that came out yesterday, the one at least for the delivers the x64 support, the animations.
Oh, yes. Yes, so this is Sun Valley. This is the first sort of hints at Sun Valley.
So talk about that.
They updated the app open and close animation on desktop with the 21277 build, because this is part of the Cobalt release, which is supposed to be done in June, which is Sun Valley stuff. We are slowly but surely starting to see UI changes and UI experience changes show up. And one of the changes in this build is that the animation is slightly different. It's not a drastic change, but it is slightly different. I'm actually not a huge fan of it. I think it needs more bounce, but there is a new animation for that. We've also got the new touch keyboard back, the new emoji picker, which is all Sun Valley-esque based. And I fully expect to see more of this in early 2021. I think we're going to see an updated File Explorer UI. We might see a new dashboard interface of some kind, which has things like your recents, from Microsoft News, and your recents in Office and whatnot. We might see an updated settings app, considerable one. There's a couple of other things as well. There might be an entertainment hub on the way, which essentially allows you to search your subscriptions on like Amazon Prime Video or Netflix or Disney Plus. Search, just a universal search to find things and watch them, which is apparently super nice. And there's also some stuff happening with the mail and calendar client. I can't talk about that yet, but I will talk about that when I can. But yes, mail and here's what I will say: the UWP mail and calendar apps won't be sticking around forever. They are going away at some point. And I think you might see.
So we'll have no more
10X.
Email on Windows.
Yeah, no more email. They're getting rid of email. Email's dead. No, they're working on a replacement for the mail and calendar app on Windows 10, but I can't talk about that yet.
That's very exciting, because I use the mail app all the time. Yeah. I know a lot like power users. Oh, that phrase. They hate it, but like for me, for a lot of people, it's actually like a pretty good app. It's not, but it has not lost features, but it hasn't really evolved over the last 2 years. They've updated it. In fact, a new version in that release you're just talking about, the dev release, there are new wallpaper backgrounds, which are really nice looking. Yeah. Oh yeah. That was announced a few weeks ago. They're really nice looking. I know it's a dumb thing, but they should really upgrade those and update wallpapers a little bit more for default stuff. But they have like I think like 6 or 9 new options, and they just look really cool. It's probably part of that Sun Valley stuff. But I'm interested to see like a revamped mail and calendar app.
The other thing we should totally mention as part of this is the Android app stuff. So I am hearing with Project Latte, as we talked about before, that Microsoft is bringing Android app support to Windows 10, and I'm told that could be ready in time for the Sun Valley release in the fall of 2021. We've talked about what it is and what we think it'll be powered by and stuff before, but real quick, I just want to throw a theory out there as to why they're doing this, because that's the one question I keep getting asked. Why are they doing this? And I don't have an answer for you because I don't work for Microsoft. Even the people who were telling me about it, I have no idea why we're doing this. But anyway, so my theory for why they're doing the Android apps and Windows thing, it's a really far out there theory, but it's a theory. It's fun. Let's talk about it. Doing this would allow Microsoft to potentially kickstart its own Android ecosystem. So right now, obviously, with the Surface Duo, it's a Google, it's Microsoft's hardware running Google's software, and I don't mean Android, I mean Google Play services. That's really where Google has, you know, its hands on Android is through Google Play services. Android alone is open source, and while it is owned by Google, anyone can take Android and make it into whatever they want to make it into. With Microsoft bringing Android apps to Windows 10, but requiring those apps to use Microsoft's own services, if you will, I don't think Play Services will be part of this. I could be wrong on that, but I've been told that it seems it's unlikely because Google doesn't really allow that kind of thing. If Microsoft is creating its own Android app service, so developers can bring their Android apps to Windows 10, if enough developers do that, Microsoft can then take those app services and put them on actual Android phones, offer them to, say, someone like Samsung and say, hey, Samsung, instead of Google Play services, why don't you use the Microsoft Play services? For example, we have an app store now which has loads of Android apps. All of these developers updated their apps to run on our store and our services. You know, you're not going to lose out on much. And obviously, this is a stupid theory, but it could be something that they're thinking about, because then this would kickstart Microsoft's own Android ecosystem that can compete with Google's, and then Microsoft could have its own OEM partners that make Android apps with Microsoft's own Play services. See where I'm going with this? Like, this might be their entry back into the mobile market. Long-term play, of course, and it might not work, but that's my theory, and that is just a theory. This isn't, people haven't told me whispers and stuff internally. I just been thinking of reasons for why they could want to possibly do this, and this is one that pops into my head and thought, yeah, that makes sense, even though it probably doesn't make any sense at all.
But yeah. I mean, it makes more sense than anything else, because you and I are both agreement that running Android apps natively on, or even emulator, whatever, how they do it on Windows is not a dream. It's just not something I'm interested in. Yeah. There are very few Android apps that I'm like, I need that on my desktop right now. So the one thing you and I both agreed on was maybe gaming. Like, there are a lot of popular mobile games that could fill in that gap in the store, especially for like Surface Go devices. Mm-hmm. That's fair. And that is something even I may. I don't really game, but I like to believe I want to game, but I really don't. But still, at least I get that point. But besides that, I do feel like this is a weird thing. That said, for a lot of the fanboys who've been asking for this for years, they can finally be happy, even though I would just be like, you can go use BlueStacks right now. You can do it. But that'd be kind of fun to watch. All right, let's move on quickly to Microsoft Authenticator. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but as I mentioned on the opening of the podcast, Authenticator is an app on iOS and on Android. It logs into your Microsoft account, your work account, school account, whatever you want to use, your private one. And it's a way to manage your 2FA, two-factor authentication. So it basically code generators and scans the barcode, the QR code. And if you ever use 2FA, this is the way to do it. It's a little bit of an extra pain, but it can also do the thing where instead of generating the code, it sends a notification, and you just hit yes. So when I log into my Microsoft accounts, I get a notification on my phone, and I'm like, yes, that's me, and logs me and all that kind of stuff. So that app's been around for a while. It's got some really neat features. Of course, it works with Face ID. It works with fingerprint sensors and all that jazz. It also backs up, which is really nice too. So when I switch phones, I basically install the backup, and boom, I get all my 2FA codes. And I have a lot of them because as more and more services offer 2FA, the more I enable it, I have to have like 15 of them. And that's a pain to go to redo them all. So I have those all in there. So that's Authenticator. It's a cool app. It's very good for business and enterprise. It has all those features in there too for management and stuff. But what I noticed in the iOS beta app, just came out this week, is support for passwords. And these passwords are coming from Edge. And so they're doing a thing where they're syncing, of course, your Edge passwords can be synced to your Microsoft account. So when you get a new PC and you launch Edge, you sync it, it's going to bring down your passwords. But they haven't done is really like a password manager, like a separate app to do that. But that's kind of what they're doing now on iOS and presumably going to do on Android. So in this app now, I have a little bottom tab that says passwords, and I click that, and it's going to bring up all my passwords for all my websites. And the app can actually act as a helper app in iOS, meaning when I go to a website and I go to like log in, or I'm using an app, if I'm using like an app that requires a login, it can pop up and fill in. So right now I use NPass. That's the one I prefer, mostly because it's not a subscription service and all my information's local. But it basically will behave like that, where it helps insert the password and info for you automatically. I think that's really clever because, and it seemed like the logical evolution of what they're doing with the security and password management stuff in Edge, but it makes like using Edge that much more fun on iOS and Android, because now your passwords are synced with your desktop and it's all kind of there, it's all encrypted, and now you have the Authenticator app, which itself is security protected. So you need you should enable your fingerprint or Face ID to log into it, or a password. But once you're inside, then you can get access to all your passwords and all that. I think that's nifty. It's something I was hoping they would do. I'm curious how they're going to do this on the Windows side. That may be something we see, of course, come online in 2021 with all the stuff Zach was talking about. That's coming to Windows 10 and 10X. But I think that was pretty cool. So we'll see what happens. We'll follow that story. But looks like you're going to have a password manager pretty soon.
I'd love to see it on Android, because right now I use Google's autofill service, which is great. It works, but I'd rather use Microsoft's.
Yeah. Now I've been using increasingly save my password to Edge because I use so many laptops and PCs, and this makes me want to use it a little bit more. And we've talked about that in the past. That stuff is one of the reasons why people don't switch browsers. Yes. If you've been a Chrome user for 10 years, is Chrome 10 years old? Probably. Yes. If you've been using Chrome for a long time, you probably have a lot of passwords saved in it. And a lot of people are bad at that stuff, where they save my password, and they don't know what the password is. And it just disappears, right?
And I don't think you can transfer your saved passwords across browsers, right? You can do bookmarks and history and all of that, but right. I think saved passwords are encrypted by each browser. Which, I mean, I could be wrong about that. I've never copied from Chrome to Edge.
I know LastPass had a feature, I believe, where you can import passwords from other services, but I don't know what those were. But yeah, it's an issue, right? Yeah. That's one reason why people don't switch browsers, though, because it's like all my stuff, including bookmarks and history, but also passwords, are in the browser, and they don't know their passwords. So hopefully this will kind of go and fix that stuff. So quickly, HP Reverb G2. So mentioning this at the beginning of the podcast. This is HP's latest mixed reality, virtual reality headset. It is about to become available. We got a review unit, and Cale Hunt did a really, really in-depth review. I was said at the beginning, I was glad I gave it to Cale because he actually uses VR, which by that I mean he uses competing systems, so he can compare this stuff. But I'll just read his bottom line here. The Reverb G2 boasts the clearest visuals I've experienced in VR, with an audio system that significantly adds to the overall package. The headset is lightweight and comfortable to wear for long periods, with a tight enough fit that there's no outside light bleed. It's just a shame that the controllers can't keep up with the headset. I have heard about this. This is where you start to see Oculus and everything have a little bit better controllers. But in terms of the actual experience, no touch capacitive sensors on controllers. Motion tracking could be better, and the field of view could be wider. But he says spectacular visual experience, robust audio system. I tried the Reverb G1. I did review that last year. It's a very comfortable headset. It's starting to get to that sweet spot of like, oh, this is actually kind of what VR can and should be. You have to understand the market. I know a lot of people who are like, who uses VR anymore? A lot of gaming, obviously, that's most of it. For consumers, it's mostly gaming still. But it's niche, but as I said before in this podcast, niche isn't bad. It just means it's a small dedicated group who spend money. And so there's that. But HP also really kind of gears this towards professionals, enterprise, developers, research. They're using it for training. They use it in hospitals. I mentioned how OSHA uses it. And so they're using it in these like professional environments. Speaking of, there was, I want to say AutoZone, or someone's using some kind of car fixing company. They're like, we use the latest techs to help diagnose your car. And the dude was wearing HoloLens 2. And I was like, anything they show me, I'm like, oh my God, look at that HoloLens, you know? And that's what people forget. HoloLens isn't a consumer device, but it is making inroads with business and enterprise. And so the Reverb G2 is kind of really, that's the real market for this device. So if you're wondering why HP is making this, they are seeing companies buy this stuff from them. They'll, you know, amusement rides and all that kind of stuff, and they're using it for that kind of stuff. And that's what it's really kind of built towards. But if you're a consumer, you can go buy it, of course, too. If you need something for gaming, you want to use Steam VR, of course. But go check out the, you know, yeah, it's got really good resolution and everything like that. But go check out Kale's review. He goes into a lot of depth about what makes this headset good. So if that's something you're into, go read that article. Let's talk about Cyberpunk 2077. Zach, have you played this game?
Briefly, I have it. I've played about an hour now. This is a game I think you'll really like.
I know. So it's like, I'll let you go on for a sec. I'm just going to say that, like, conceptually, the medium, the whole genre is very me.
Yeah.
And it is surprising I'm not more excited about it. But tell us your thoughts about it after playing it for an hour.
It's an expansive open world game with, in my opinion, not so great first person shooter mechanics. I'm not a huge fan of the first person shooting in this game. But fantastic visuals. Like the game is beautiful. I'm playing on a Series X. But it's a buggy game as well. Like I got about 35 minutes in and I had to go and meet somebody, but the person who I was trying to meet wasn't there.
And where are you playing it on? Xbox
Series X, yeah.
Series X? Okay.
Yeah. So I went to the play, like, you have to travel because you get the mini maps. It's like GTA, really. You travel around the city, go to different places, do missions. But I got to one of the waypoints where I was supposed to go and talk to some guy, and the guy just wasn't there. I spent like 30 minutes looking for this guy. Just had to restart the game, and then he showed up in the place he was supposed to be. But yeah, it is a buggy game. It's also a very adult game. If you are under 18, do not play this game. There's a lot of just adultness to the game that people with younger eyes should not experience, in my opinion. But there you go. Yeah, I think it's a great game. I'm enjoying it. But like I said, I think the weakest point for me is the first-person shooting mechanics. I just don't think it's a great first-person shooter, which is unfortunate because you are doing a lot of shooting. But there you go. Yeah, I think it's great, and I think, Dan, you'll really enjoy it as well. The art style and the world is really right up your street, I think.
Yeah, that's it's on my, maybe around Christmas. I'll get a little break. I'll start to try to play it. You know, we should point out Jez Corden, of course, did a very 4,000-word review on it, and he basically said it's one of, if not the best video games ever made. And it's because of how expansive it is and how much you can do in the world and the story and all this kind of stuff. So,
but,
you know,
here's the thing.
Yeah.
That's just open world games, though. When the next GTA comes out, I bet you any money it trumps this considerably. Because the last GTA was GTA 5, and that was not last gen. It wasn't a last gen game. That was a gen before last gen game. It came out at the end of the 360 PS3 era. And so that was limited, really, by that generation. Then Red Dead 2 came out, which was another Rockstar game last gen, and that was such a massive improvement over GTA 5. But I'd argue that Red Dead Redemption 2 is a better open world game than Cyberpunk 2077 is. That's my opinion. I know it's probably a controversial opinion, but I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is the pinnacle open world game out right now.
Yeah, I've never played that one, but I know there's still, it's sort of like World of Warcraft, where people keep finding new ways to exploit or try new things. I read recently there was like in Red Dead Redemption, where there were storms that were forming and people were tracking the storms and trying to see if there was a pattern. And
is that Flight Sim?
No, Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, is that in Red Dead 2?
Yeah, there would be like weather changes and stuff like that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, there you go.
No, because I think Flight Sim, the weather's based on real weather.
That's right.
why.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, okay. Sorry. I totally half listened to what you were saying.
Yeah, with Flight Sim, it's another one where, like, if there's a hurricane in the real world, there's a real hurricane in Flight Sim, and people fly into the hurricanes.
Yeah.
To check it out, which is totally wild. Yeah, I mean, and Rockstar, to their credit, right, they are the masters of this open world genre, right? Grand Theft Auto, just yeah, so that's a good point. But yeah, I agree. The aesthetic and everything like that looks really fun. And everybody loves Keanu Reeves. I'm really indifferent to Keanu Reeves. I don't think he's actually a great actor. I don't.
Matrix 4 coming soon.
I don't mind him. I watch movies with him. I mean, I like the Matrix series. John Wick is okay. It's overrated, but it's okay. It's done well. But now I'm excited about this game, so hopefully I'll get around to playing it. We should also point out that two of our other writers, Brendan Lowry and Richard Devine. Well, this started with Richard Devine. He did a kind of controversial take on, he says, Cyberpunk 2077 is proof Halo Infinite should skip the Xbox One.
I agree.
And he's talking about the performance issues, apparently. So the cool thing about Cyberpunk is it's basically backwards compatible, and that's what's running under on the Xbox One. And so if you have an Xbox One, you can go play it today, which is actually how, if I were to play it on Xbox, because I sold my Series X for a lot of money, by the way.
You shouldn't be shagging about this. You're the reason people hate.
I did nothing. Listen, I bought it. I pre-ordered it, and then I was hoping Microsoft would send me one, and they didn't. And then I needed the money when it finally showed up. And I was just like, you know what? I don't really game that much. I don't really kind of care.
That's true.
So all I did was go on eBay.
Yeah, you didn't have malicious intent. I guess that's the
No,
thing.
I didn't buy it with the intent of selling it, not at all. Because I pre-ordered so early, I was actually like excited. But then it arrived, I was just like, dude, I got a folding PC, I got a dual screen phone, I got a 5G laptop that's supposed to show up at any minute. Like, I have way cooler stuff that's Dan. The Series X, I will buy a Series X at some point, but I just don't game. So all I did was throw it on eBay and let the market speak. Like, that's all I did. Someone bought it, and that person, by the way, is very happy. So I don't feel bad. But I don't know where I was going with that. Oh yeah, so Cyberpunk. So Richard Devine basically took the position that, I guess, and maybe you can speak to this, on Xbox One, Cyberpunk 2077 can have like pretty bad frame rates.
I think it's bad frame rates, but also it's super low res. I think on the standard Xbox One, I think it's running 720 or somewhere between 720 and 1080. It's not a great experience on the original one.
Yeah, he pointed out, at least on the PS4, they've seen frame rates as low as 15 frames per second.
Oof, yeah.
Seemingly constant 20 frames per second. And that's a woof. That is painful. So I don't know really about the Xbox One, but it's definitely not as good. So he's basically saying that because of this, they're going to make Halo Infinite backwards compatible too.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is, when you try to make these massive high fidelity games, and then you try to do that but also make it compatible for Xbox One, it's just not a good experience, and they should forget about it. I get the point. I think there's zero chance that's going to happen, but I understand where he's coming from. Brendan Lowry wrote a counterpoint to that, literally called, "No, Cyberpunk 2077 isn't proof that Halo Infinite should skip Xbox One." And his point is, these are different genre games, that Halo is going to be a little bit more limited in terms of a first-person shooter. Yeah, there are campaigns, all that kind of stuff, but it's not nearly as expansive as Cyberpunk, so it shouldn't have those same kind of issues. That's a valid point, I think.
So my opinion on this is that I think Richard's right. I think they should drop last gen, because it's not just about graphical performance. Because you can do backwards compatibility, but at the very least, for the most part, it's always just about graphics, right? Like, an older gen console just has worse graphics. But with some of these games, Halo Infinite and Cyberpunk 2077, although they are different genres and whatnot, it's more than just about the graphics. It's about, the CPU, what the CPU can process when it comes to AI and different, different parts of the world being loaded at once, and memory bandwidth and all of that stuff. I'm now treading into territory which I don't understand myself. I'm not a game developer, but dropping last gen means that you can actually fully harness the power of the next gen. And actually do things in addition to just better graphics, right? You can actually enhance gameplay and other things that you couldn't really do on the last gen because the CPU isn't as strong. Now, people will also refer to me and say, yeah, but on PCs it's never really an issue. But PCs are a different beast, because games can span all the way back, 10 years back, but you're not going to have an enjoyable experience playing a Red Dead Redemption 2, for example, on a PC that's built in 2010. You can do it, and you may be able to upgrade the graphics card, but your CPU very quickly becomes the bottleneck. But PCs have the opportunity to upgrade their CPUs. Consoles don't. You don't get to do that on consoles. So And people are saying, yeah, but there's specific builds optimized for the Series X and stuff. But that's the actual game engine is the same. You just get the different levels on the different consoles. Is again, it comes down to graphics. You rarely get different builds of the game that have different actual game engines to take advantage of the console. The game engine is the same across both versions of the game. It's just the graphics that are upped or lowered depending on the console you use. But again, we'll have to see what Halo does. Maybe 343 will be the first game developer that actually builds two different game engines, one for the One, one for the Series X. I doubt they will do that. It would make no sense, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and we should point out, of course, that we're expecting. I don't know if you mentioned this, that Cyberpunk will be getting Series X and Series S optimizations sometime next year for basically to use that. It's we're in in-between stage. There's pros and cons. I heard we're going with this Series S. You're not going to be getting as good performance on some things too. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a balancing act. We have to also acknowledge the fact that the tools used for Series X for devs are new. They're being updated.
Yeah.
So there's a breaking in period here. So
here's the thing, like, in my opinion, with this whole cutting off the Xbox One, is that's going to happen eventually anyway. Just why not just do it sooner than later? Like, the Flight Sim is coming to Series X and S next year. It's not coming to Xbox One. I think that's officially the first game that will be Series X S only and not be backwards compatible with previous gen. Why not make Halo one of them as well? I mean, it's like, just why not? Just by holiday 2021, people have either chosen that they're gonna get an Xbox or they're gonna get a PS5. People hanging on to the Xbox One, I don't think are really interested in Microsoft's AAA gaming titles anyway, which Halo is. Let's be real. Halo is Xbox. Without Halo, there is no Xbox. So yeah, I think it wouldn't hurt anyone if it was next gen only.
Now I got to decide if I want to buy Cyberpunk on PC or Xbox.
I would buy it on PC.
That's what I'm leaning towards.
Yeah.
Mostly because
you've got a PC that can play it.
I have a PC that can play it. I'm literally in front of it 90% of the day, apparently. Yeah. And I can't, I got some really good displays and monitors and all that kind of stuff.
I'll tell you why you should get it on PC and not Xbox Series X, because although it plays on Series X at 4K and stuff, it is using DLSS, I think, which means it's rendering things, the actual world and stuff, in lower resolution, and you can really tell on the Series X, like, you're playing and things look mushy or grainy almost, and there is a film grain effect, I think, but you can turn that off and it's still the same. It's because it's actually lowering the resolution of textures and stuff of different parts of the world, so you can run at close to 60 frames per second. With an actual good gaming PC, I don't think you get that artifacting.
No, in fact, I was playing Control, which has DLSS, and you can configure and all that, and that game is... It's a fun game. It makes me want to play it this weekend. I should get back into it. I have so much stuff to catch up on, too. I've been playing Control. Of course, I like Destiny 2, but I haven't played that in a month, so I'm like way behind on all the things that have come out for that. I like my little, side scrollers and stuff. I was playing Hades for a while, too, which is a lot of fun. And then, of course, get into Cyberpunk. But, yeah, there's... once you get into the actual PC gaming stuff, it's a lot more kind of enjoyable in terms of the configuration options. Plus, it's, I got some pretty good displays around here. I should point out Control, which I've talked about on the podcast before, is a really good game, is now available, pretty positive on this, on Game Pass. So if you use that, you can go play it on your Xbox. And actually, I should check to see if it's on PC. too. I want to take the Game Pass is the value on it so insane. Doom Eternal is also now on Game Pass, which if you haven't played Doom Eternal, like just stop everything. If you have Game Pass, just go and download it. It's Control is not on for PC, but Subway Surfers is. It's Subway Endless Runners. Oh my God.
Funny.
But yeah, go play Control and Doom Eternal if you have the Game Pass on your Xbox, because Doom Eternal is phenomenal. That's one of my favorite games. I love everything about it. And Control is just a really cool story. And I love also the aesthetics for that one too. If you play that and Cyberpunk, you're going to get that retro 80s neon effect very well. Think that's about it. Oh, thing of the week. Do you want to go first? Did you think of one?
Sure, mine's stupid, but I'll do it anyway. So I bought the black, or the what are they called? The graphite grey Surface earbuds. I already
Mhm.
owned the white pair, the Glacier white Surface earbuds.
You
So
just wanted that matte
you
gray
may be
case.
you may be wondering, why did I buy another pair? The answer is because of the matte grey case. It's so much better than the stupid
I
white one
don't
that
get your
scratches.
logic.
It scratches so much, and it looks ugly, and it's fingerprinty, and it's gross. This one, beautiful, feels nice in the hand, doesn't scratch. It's better in every way. Get
You're
this one.
so weird. So weird.
If you're in the market for Surface earbuds, get the grey ones. I'm telling you, you'll prefer them.
Fair enough. I actually have two things. Last week I wrote a review for these guys, the Razer, if I can remember the name, Razer Hammerhead True Wireless Pro. Um, these are new wireless earbuds from Razer, and you can see them here if you're watching the video, holding them up. They look like kind of like black AirPods. And being that they're black, they're cooler. Because if they're white, you would know what they are. They're black, you're like, those aren't AirPods. So what makes these cool? The Hammerheads have been out since last year. Actually, they've been out for a few years, but these are the pro versions. The regular Hammerheads are still available. In fact, you can get them on sale. So these are the pro. What it brings is active noise cancellation. So there's both that kind of fits in your canal, so that gets you your passive noise canceling. But then it actually has the microphone and does the audio to basically block out a counter. They're not as good as over the head noise canceling, of course, but it's pretty good. The other thing is these are THX certified. Now, Razer bought THX, but it operates as a separate company. They always point it out because it's not like they just slapped THX on there like because we bought it. These are co-developed with the THX engineers from the beginning to meet their rigorous standards for headphones. So any company can go to THX and be like, we would like to certify these. And they'll go through the same testing and go back and forth and manipulate it. And if it meets the criteria, they can then put THX on their headphones. So Razer did that from the very beginning from the design standpoints. And so these get basically really good, it's audio quality, of course, and the right balance of sound, but also the noise canceling and all this kind of stuff. I actually detail it in the review what THX certification means. It's not just like they're good. They also, of course, so there's there's the equalizer for the app, and this THX preset, which is basically supposed to be the perfect balanced sound. But then they have things like increased bass and richness or vocal only, or, so they have those other presets, but they do now let you customize the EQ, which I do the typical sweep where the bass is high and it tips down, comes back up again. And so so don't buy these for battery life. They get okay battery life. It's like 4 to 5 hours, and then the case itself recharges, I think, another 4 times or 5 times. So you're supposed to get like 20 hours of battery life per charge. And yes, it's a USB Type-C charger on the bottom. So there you go, with an LED on it. But the reason why they don't get amazing battery life, although to be fair, active noise canceling earbuds all get around 4 to 5 hours of battery life. There are a few that go a little bit higher, but that's the average. But the reason is because of the latency. So there is a game mode on these, which they're Razer, you would expect that. And what that does is they decrease latency dramatically. I believe it's 60 milliseconds. I forgot, it's in the review. But this is used for people who want to mobile game. I'm talking like people who actually do like the first person shooters, and that's a thing now. People hardcore game on their phones. I mean, is that Asus that makes a Rogue phone? And Razer made a gaming phone for a few years too. So that's like a thing, right? So it makes sense you would want Bluetooth headphones with low latency, so it better matches what you're seeing on screen, as every second counts. Now, technically, what they did, any company could do. The reason most companies don't do it is because it decreases battery life. But here's an option, so you can just toggle it on, toggle it off, and it'll give you that low latency. If you don't game, they're still really good headphones. They're very comfortable. They come with 7 ear tips, and you can swap them out, including there's these, what they're called. It's like a spongy material that conforms to your ear canal. But they're very comfortable to wear. The audio fidelity, I think, is really good on them. I like the size. It's got the little case. It's very Apple-ish in design, which is fine. I mean, their case fits into your pocket nicely. And they sell this stupid kind of accessory case, which I have on here with the little latch carabiner. Is that what it's called? I always forget what word it is. But I don't know. The case is like $30. Although you can get it with a deal or something like that. But it has their three-headed snake, but it adds a little bit of thickness to it and all that kind of stuff. But they're $200, so not cheap. But they're good. If you want noise canceling headphones, they're THX certified and you can use for gaming. You don't need gaming mode though. If like you're watching a video, it syncs perfectly there. I had no issues there, so you can use it normally. But
at least they're not $550.
Right. Yeah, we didn't talk about that this week because that's ridiculous, and I don't even want to acknowledge that those stupid things exist. But hold on, I guess a double Razer thing here. So, spoiler alert. So this is the Razer Book 13. Again, I'm holding it up in the video if you're watching. The review is coming up early next week. I just did all the photos for this today, and it's on my Instagram already. So the spoiler is this is my favorite Ultrabook of 2020.
Wow.
And it was the XPS 13, and that's still up there. They're almost tied. It really comes down to kind of personal preference. But out the gate, Razer really knocked it out of the park with this. I mean, I'm a big fan of this design. It's perfectly symmetrical. It's a square. It's just a block. It's a block of aluminum. It's just metal. It's not too heavy either, but it's small. It's compact. So let's talk about the specs real quickly. So the reason I love it, of course, 16:10 display. I'm 99% sure they sourced the same display that Dell uses. That is a Sharp IGZO. So it's Sharp IGZO, anti-reflective layer on it, touch support, full HD or 4K, your option. It's a gorgeous display, super thin bezels. Being at 16:10, it means you also have that display goes right down to the bottom of the keyboard. And it's a bright display, just really, really nice looking. I'm using the full HD version, totally fine. I wouldn't buy the 4K unless you really, really need the 4K, but I think the full HD looks great. It does have Windows Hello, top camera, of course, and the camera's pretty good. I mean, it's a 720p. It's not a Surface camera, but it's okay, and you get the Windows Hello stuff. You do get the RGB keyboard with each key lights up individually, or you can just make them white, that's fine. It's got 2 stereo speakers on the sides that are THX, and it has the best spatial audio I've ever heard on a laptop. It's really weird when you hear it because it really sounds like it's coming from out here from the sides versus the laptop itself. And it's running Intel 11th gen. So you get a Core i7, you can get a Core i5 through Razer themselves. And the performance, if you go into the high performance mode, which you can configure and crank up the fan, it'll beat out even the XPS 13. Like it does, the performance on it is phenomenal. And the battery life is very good on it. Again, I attribute to the 11th gen stuff a lot, but it doesn't reach the XPS 13 technically beat it for battery life. But this is going to be all day. This is at least 8 hours of battery life. But and the best thing too that kind of beats the Dell on is resume. So as you guys all know, there's instant resume, and all Intels do this now, where you basically open that lid, it's instant on, all that kind of stuff. That's fine, it's fast. But the issue is when they would go to sleep, that hibernation mode, it would still take a long time. This thing goes from sleep to you're logged in about 9 seconds. So if you leave this off, close that lid and come back, 24 hours from now, and you open that lid, about 9 seconds, you're logged back in. That's really, really fast. This is part of the Project Evo stuff. Is that what it is, Project Evo?
Yeah.
Did it say that? Yeah, okay. I always forget the names. That's the other thing. There's no stickers on this, which is nice. But this is all those optimizations. The SSD is fast on there. The Bluetooth is good. The audio is fantastic. It's so good. I'm tempted to buy one because I have to send this back. And I'm tempted to buy one because it's what I would use all the time as an Ultrabook. Of course, it doesn't have LTE, so that's a bummer. That's not a good use of my money. I have a lot of laptops, but it's so good. I bring it to typing on it. The trackpad's huge. It's just they did a really, really good job. So that is the thing of my week. Zach's getting bored. I can tell he's getting finicky.
This is a 2-hour podcast.
Is there? I haven't looked. Yeah, it is. We just hit 2 hours. Well,
Yeah.
we said at the beginning we had a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Is the review released yet? Yeah, no, I said it's coming out early next week, so probably Tuesday it should be out. But yeah, go check it out. It's I I really dig it. It's a really good laptop. They just added LTE, it'd be perfect. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's really nitpicking at this point. So
Real quick before we wrap up, I do want to quickly, I guess, talk about the schedule for the podcast in the next few weeks.
oh yes,
Obviously, we're heading into the holidays, so there won't be an episode on the 25th because that is obviously Christmas Day, and we will be busy doing Christmas Day things. And then there will not be an episode on the 1st either because that is New Year's Day, and I'm gonna be tired. So there'll be no podcast for 2 weeks. Next Friday, the 18th, there will not be a live episode. But depending on the week, if there's news or stuff worth talking about, we will do an episode. But we'll do that live on Monday instead, the 21st, and that will go out to podcasting services on the Tuesday, which is the 22nd. So that's either this week or next week on the 22nd will be our last episode of the year, and then we'll be back on January the 8th. For the Friday episode, which will be live, and that will go out on Monday, the 11th of January, I guess. So yes, so those for you wondering what we're doing over the holidays. Next week, perhaps we'll do one more episode, I guess on the 21st, and then there'll be nothing until January 8th. So keep an eye out, and happy holidays if we don't come back next week.
sounds like a plan. As always, you can. We're gonna do Q&A now, so start firing off those questions. We're going to keep it short. I still have a review to finish that's going to go on the live pretty soon. But yeah, so fire off your questions. If you're listening to this recorded, thankfully this podcast is now coming to an end. You can join us, as Zach mentioned, our temp schedule, at least for the next few days. But usually we're Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. Yep. And you can go to our YouTube/Windows Central channel to check out previous episodes, as well as watch us live and join the live podcast when we do that. You can try to follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, although I'm still locked out of that account, so who knows. By the way, that was also funny because my account, even though I'm locked out, managed to unfollow everyone. It went from over 600 to 0 in a flash, despite the fact that no one has access to this account. So thank you, Twitter. If I unfollowed you, do not take it personally, because it definitely was not me doing it. Maybe in 2021 I'll get Twitter back. Who knows? You can follow Zach, though, at ZACBOWDEN, and he'll answer your questions there. As always, we appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to this extended podcast, but we had a lot to talk about. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care, everyone.
Oh, let's see if voice recorder can save a 2-hour recording.
Yeah.
Someone's asking, will 10X have fluent design blur effects? Yes. It does. Do you think that the Windows 10X tablet touch experience when reading and browsing will be an improvement over that of Windows 10? How will it compare to that of an iPad? So the tablet experience on Windows 10X, there's no tablet mode. It's just 10X, and you can use it as in laptop form or in touch form. There are improvements over Windows 10. It's much more fluid, for example. I can swipe up from the bottom to access the start menu. I can tap on an app icon. When I tap on that icon, it will push in and pull out, and the app will then expand to fill the screen. Connected animations, fluid animations. It is nice. The new touch keyboard is really great as well, which is currently in testing in the desktop builds as well. There's a brand new touch keyboard. It's really, really nice as well. The new quick actions and stuff in quick settings on 10X are nice because you can actually configure them and stuff straight from that little widget. You don't have to go into settings to do it. Nice for tablet mode. It's like a control center, if you will. But it's not perfect. Like, for example, you cannot make it so the taskbar disappears when you're in an app, which I know some people like. They want to use full screen apps. You can't do that in tablet mode on 10X tablets because, again, there's no tablet mode. I keep saying that. I shouldn't. And also Edge is still Edge. So if I see a lot of people complaining about Edge on tablets because it doesn't do much to cater to the tablet UX. And that's not changed on 10X. Windows, the Edge browser is still a desktop browser. And that's not changed by 10X itself.
We're gonna be doing a thing about tablets pretty soon where well, I am. other people. But the premise is, do tablets matter anymore?
The answer is basically no, unless you're an
Yeah,
iPad.
I
Unless
mean,
you're an iPad.
but even there, I could show you the iPad sales. They peaked in 2014 and since then have declined basically every year since. And they're going to continue to decline through 2025. Tablets are just not a thing anymore. And I think they're just not. I think when a lot of people are like, why doesn't Microsoft make tablet mode better? I think it's because they don't care about tablet mode because no one cares about tablet mode. I personally don't care about tablet mode. They could remove tablet mode from my Surface Pro X. I wouldn't blink an eye. I do not care. Do not ever use it. A 13-inch tablet never made sense to me. And I just find that I don't like tablets. So I think that we'll follow up on that. By the way, Zach, just realized I predated the podcast last time, and we didn't do the podcast last week. So when I announced the show, I said it was episode 208.
Great.
But it was 207. That's up to you what you want to do with that. So
let's do the whole show again.
Yes, that is one option, though. Don't prefer
it. Someone's asking. I missed it. Sorry, I've lost the question I wanted to talk about. It was there. I saw it. It's gone. Never mind.
I know. Someone saying I use tablet mode. I know people. I know people still use it and still want it. I'm not denying that. I'm saying as a market, though, it's really gone down. It's just not a thing. There's a reason why after Windows 8 and all this kind of stuff, we saw manufacturers pull out of using Windows as a tablet. They just weren't very good. Samsung still makes Android tablets, and they're kind of like the last one standing. It's a good company to make tablets. Samsung is the only one that could compete with Apple sort of on hardware quality. But how many people are buying Samsung Android tablets, right? It's also not a good experience. The iPad is the quintessential tablet. And listen, it does well enough, especially with the margins. But go look at statistics. You can look at the amount of money they're making in sales. They're going down every single year. It's a slope. And the reason's obvious. They're making giant phones now, including the iPhone 12 Pro Max, whatever that is. They're putting iOS apps on their laptops. They're turning the iPad into a laptop. And as someone pointed out, what we're seeing is probably a convergence of tablets and PCs, which, I think that's exactly it. I think there needs to be a balance. There needs to be touch support. But the classic concept of a tablet, I think, is really just sort of just on its way out.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the question. He deleted it and redone it. Wouldn't it make more sense for Microsoft to make an in-house mobile OS with Project Latte integrated, maybe tweaking 10x rather than pushing its own Android ecosystem? So one, that was my theory. This isn't a thing they're doing. And two, the reason I think my theory makes more sense than just making Windows 10x mobile and having it emulate Android apps is because on a phone, most of the apps you'll be using are Android apps. So, there's no point making it Windows-based when you could just make it Android-based and have those apps run natively. Because emulating an app means a performance hit. It just does. Especially on a phone, on a phone processor, you're absolutely going to get a performance hit running emulated apps, or translated apps, if you will. So make it Android, you don't have to translate those apps. And you're not going to be running Windows apps on a phone anyway, because Windows apps are built for big screens, not for small screens. Android apps can kind of do both, even though they'd suck on big screens and are much better on small screens. So I think it would make more sense for Microsoft to try and kickstart its own Android ecosystem by embracing Android and trying to compete with Google's Android, because Microsoft could do that if they wanted. Amazon has tried and failed. Samsung has kind of tried. Samsung had its own app store, but it still uses Google's Play services. But yeah, Amazon went the full route. Amazon just went, no, bye Google, we're doing our own Android. To failure, really, but they did try it, and it can be done. So we'll see if Microsoft actually does what I'm saying.
Someone's saying, I hear you, Daniel, but what about having the option of using the tablet mode on a device like Surface Book? I think it really has an added value because the same device apps documents. So I think the use case that what you're seeing for like Surface Book is basically to use it as for drawing and inking and taking notes, and then that kind of it's a very limited use of that screen, but for some people, it's actually kind of a critical thing. That's sort of the selling point. I see it. I, I mean, Zach and I both know, like, we don't ever remove that top screen to use it as a tablet, even though it's like it's so light. Like
Yeah, it's
when
nice.
you hold it, yeah, it's nice. But I don't like tablets. I've never gone into tablets. I've had iPads over the years. It just feels like a giant phone to me. And then I just don't. I like with a precision touchpad and keyboard. I just prefer that as my interaction. Um, and it just feels weird using a tablet. I think tablets for me start to make sense when they're at 10 inches or smaller. Surface Go feels definitely more tabletish to me. Something I'd like to use. So I feel like, same with the Surface Pro, yeah, you can flip the keyboard around and out the tablet. But I think really what people are kind of using for is like as a note-taking thing to hold in your hand and take notes or do a scribble or just to change the angle of which you're using it. So um, yeah, but I think the market has spoken on this. Like I said, you just look at sales of tablets. I'm not saying it should be completely ignored, but it's a dwindling use case.
Yeah,
And it's why Microsoft doubled down on calling Surface Pro
a
basically
laptop.
a laptop. Yeah, and their whole idea is it's a laptop that adjusts to what you would need to do, right? Versus a tablet that's also a PC.
As someone who owns a 2-in-1 Chromebook, I think it makes a near perfect tablet experience compared to Android, and I hope Windows 10 X does the same thing. So Windows 10 X is very similar to Chrome OS in that regard. That's what because I was having a chat with people on Twitter. I think 10X is a huge step forward for Windows tablets. It's much more like Chrome OS than it is Windows 10. But that also means it's much more like Chrome OS than it is iPad. A lot of people are expecting like an iPad-esque experience on Windows, which I don't think is ever going to happen. But if you've used Chrome OS, you know that that's fine on tablets, and 10X is at that level, I think. I'd actually argue that 10X, from a UX perspective, is better on tablets than Chrome OS is. And Chrome OS is already fine on tablets. So, yeah. What any news about a Surface Pro X with Snapdragon 888s? I don't think we'll see a Snapdragon 888 in the Surface Pro X. We'll see a new laptop class Snapdragon processor in a future Surface Pro X, I assume. Although it'll be Microsoft customized, likely based on the
Yeah,
Snapdragon 888, I assume, but it won't be the Snapdragon 888s.
that's a good, what you're just saying is kind of a good point. We don't know, but I feel like the logical next step for Qualcomm is to make an actual laptop original architected I can't talk today, ARM processor. Because right now, yeah, right, the Snapdragon 8CX, was it? The SQ2 is a modified 8CX Gen 2, which is a modified Snapdragon 855.
Yeah.
If you follow that. At what points are they going to, and is it different? Are they going to actually manufacture and design a chip from scratch that's made just for computers, that's not just a phone processor jacked up a little bit? And I don't know if that needs to happen because I don't know what that would even mean because I don't design chips, right? So I don't know what that would look like. But I wonder if that is what's going to happen next. And if that is going to happen, it would make sense that we haven't seen it yet because it takes years to design a chip and then get it into manufacturing and then be able to manufacture it at scale. Like it's a long process. But if they had started a couple of years ago on that, we may start to see that in the next year or two. So I think that's something to watch at least. But I'm really curious about that.
Any thoughts on why Microsoft went emulation over translation? I have no technical insight as to why. I read online a couple theories. One was that on Mac OS, it's easier to go translation because there's really only one compiler for apps. If you're building an app on Mac OS, you're using Xcode. So Apple knows how those built apps are built and stuff, and maybe can write a translation layer that super easily. Or I say easily, but you know what I mean. Whereas on Windows, there's thousands of compilers. You can build Windows applications in any which way you really want. Translating those might be more difficult as a result. That's one of the things I read online. I don't know if that's technically accurate or not, but there you go.
What happened with let others enjoy it? People can enjoy what tab? I assume you're talking about tablet mode. If that's the case, you can enjoy what's there.
The tablet mode's
I
still
think
there. It's not going away.
I'm not telling you not to enjoy it. What I'm saying is, I don't believe it makes sense for Microsoft to invest money, time, development, and resources to improve a function of a device that is clearly
That nobody
waning,
really uses. Yeah.
that no one really uses. Like, that's all I'm saying. They're not there to just always make features for a dwindling class of users. Like,
And that's not the same as the bet on Windows 10 and ARM, because that's different, because that's a play for the future. ARM is the future of computing in a lot of areas, and although Windows 10 and ARM devices aren't the mainstream, and likely never will be the mainstream, or at least not anytime soon, it's important to have that there. Whereas Windows 10 tablet mode, tablets, the high for tablets has come and gone. We're on the downslope now. We're not going to see another, and outside of foldables and phones, we're not going to see dedicated tablets that can't fold be anything be important anymore. And foldable devices, we're going to see 10x, and 10x is fine on tablets. As I said, it's better than Chrome OS in my opinion. So there you go.
Someone was also asking earlier about Surface Book and gaming. So if you go read my review for Surface Book 3, I touch upon that quite a bit. In fact, so long story short, you can definitely game on Surface Book 3. I was playing Doom on there, and it played beautifully. I actually embedded a clip of me playing it. And you can see the frame rate and the resolution and what it would look like. I like gaming on Surface Book. I actually think it looks really nice. That said, don't buy Surface Book as a gaming machine. Buy it for something you occasionally game on. And it's going to be a different experience than a gaming laptop. You're not going to get as much performance, but that processor can do quite a bit, and the screen looks really nice. But don't forget the way the fans work on and all that kind of stuff. It's just it's built a bit differently. But I like gaming on Surface Book, but I'm also not a hardcore gamer, which is why I don't buy gaming laptops. So you just got to know the balance there. But I've always use Surface Book with gaming and as testing, and it's been really fun to watch how it went from really can't game because it had no GPU in it. Remember that is like custom GPU. It went from that to like, oh, I can now play like Doom on this thing and like really get good frame rates and look nice. But you're still limited to a 60 hertz display. Gaming laptops go 120 hertz and much higher than that. So depends what you're comfortable with. But yeah, you can use Surface Book for gaming.
What are your guesses on the Surface Neo? Should we expect an updated design before release? I don't think so. Considering this device was done in 2018 and launched basically as is in 2020, Surface Neo can stick around, will likely have its same design or very similar design to what we've seen. The only differences will be internally. There'll be updated processor, maybe more RAM or something or other. But I think the external design will be the same.
CES coming closer, and AMD will introduce 5,000 mobile chips. That's an if. I haven't been following this, but I don't want to assume they're going to introduce the mobile chip series, but they could. Do you think Surface Laptop 4 will be using those instead? I really don't know. Knowing Microsoft, probably not.
Yeah, I would say if they were going to be using 5,000 chips, they would have to have been testing in the Laptop 4 6 months ago from now. Well, maybe not 6, maybe 4 months ago, but they would have to be testing them at this point, and I don't think they are. I think they are 4,000 series.
Curtis, I was talking about the Surface Book 15-inch. That's what I was using for the review. But the 13-inch can game too. It's not that much different. You're getting a slightly weaker GPU, of course, but the fundamentals are basically there.
Is there a beta or dev copy of 10X I can install on a device to try out? Unfortunately not. Windows 10X is something that you can only get on new hardware that it ships with. You cannot just buy a copy of 10X and install it on your existing device. That is not how it works, unfortunately. Because it's built on Windows Core OS, which is a more secure, stripped-back platform, similar to iOS and Chrome OS. Although Chrome OS isn't as locked down as iOS. Windows 10X is more like iOS in regards to locked downness of the platform.
Do you think Microsoft will be able to continue providing services to organizations some of its workers dislike, like the Department of Defense? I think so far they have been. The difference is, Microsoft's culture right now is very much a two-way street. So management makes decisions and the workers hear it and they'll have a back and forth. So there's been a lot of pushback from the workers about supporting Project HoloLens is used a lot by the military as advanced weaponry for soldiers out in the field and all this kind of stuff, basically making super augmented soldiers. And so there is pushback. A lot of people work at these companies. They're like, I don't want the stuff I work on to be used for, spying on people, killing people in the field, used for satellites. And I get the argument. And so the difference between Microsoft today and years ago is like Satya Nadella and his team would be like, they'll listen to those people, they'll hear them, they'll open a dialogue. But at the end of the day, Nadella basically said, we hear you, but we're still doing this kind of thing. And that's not a great answer if you were hoping they would, back out of these things. But at the same time, at least they know their voices are being heard, and everybody's got to decide for themselves what they can and can't do in life in terms of what they support and directly or indirectly. But at least the company's not like, shut up, get back to work. They're like, all right, let's talk about this. Let's have a discussion. And they've had these internal meetings with workers. I think it's kind of cool. It's a way to do it. But ultimately, Nadella is the CEO. He's got to make a decision. And, he made it. And so I don't think you'll see Microsoft pull out of a lot of the stuff. I also think with the new administration coming in the U.S., you're going to see a lot of those controversial policies get pulled back. And you'll see a lot of the complaints, for instance, the border issues, right? It's going to be adjusted. So you're not going to see as much pushback from the employees because of the new administration.
Right, a couple more questions and I have to head off. Do you think Sun Valley's tablet mode will be its own thing, / improved, or similar to the 10X experience? I think it'll be similar to the 10X experience. I'm on book 1 with dedicated GPU. Oh, actually, no. Sorry, back to that first question. There will be additional things on desktop that I've heard about. So I don't know. So this was described as being weird. I think what it is they're working on a gesture layer, but that sits above the OS. So you can use 5 fingers or something to minimize apps or switch desktops and stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure if that'll actually ship, but I did hear that was something they were looking into. So stuff like that will be improved for touch users. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what the actual UX looks like. I'm on book 1 with a dedicated GPU, waiting for a major design inside on the book 4. Inside info on book 4. No, unfortunately not. I do not think we'll see a book 4 for at least another year, 2022 at the earliest, because the book is for some reason like a 2.5 year cycle. It's the longest outside of studio, I think. So yeah, I don't think we'll see another one again until 2022, because the book 3 just came out this year. All right, I think that's enough.
Just quickly, someone's asking about standing mats. Yes, I'm using a standing mat. I put the link into the comments. It is a Topo Comfort mat by Ergo Driven. It's a couple years old. I've had this for a long time. It's fine. I like it. It gives you different contours to step on, basically. I will say, I believe Wirecutter has done a best standing mat review, and they have a different one now that's newer and stuff like that. So if you're interested in standing mats, go check out Wirecutter. They've done that. But if you're using a standing desk, you definitely need a standing mat, because it really makes it better. So,
all right,
that is.
Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We may be back on the 21st. And if we're not, we'll be back on January 8th. So follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we're going live and all that good stuff. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye.